everybody. It is the late Jessica Jones. I hope you guys are having a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for bearing with us tonight. It's usually when we have the most important information to put out there, we have the most difficult technical situations, and that is the case tonight. And we've got everything up and running perfectly and smoothly now. Fingers crossed. And so I am super, super excited for our topic tonight and for my wonderful guest, my esteemed co-host tonight, Mr. Jimmy Paine, former MIB, is here in the studio with me tonight. And we are going to be getting into the topic of Dulce Base and all of the historical information and all the inside scoop that Jimmy has. We're going to go into that tonight. And I think it's very important considering that we just did a show yesterday with the lovely Jane and the wonderful Jicarilla of Midwest Night Watchers. We talked about a potential alleged briefing of some Christian pastors in Tennessee talking about, I guess I said the government had come in, some three-letter agencies maybe, I don't know who it was, intelligence to come in and brief them on the disclosure of UFOs and aliens and whatnot, and to tell them to prepare the congregations for imminent disclosure when it comes to that kind of stuff. And so tonight we are going full disclosure, y'all, and into the Dulce Base. It is one of the worst of the worst when it comes, or maybe the best of the best. I don't know. It's worst of the worst for humanity's sake. But it's actually some of the most interesting information when it comes to animal-human hybrids, alien-human hybrids, and all these different experiments that they have going on down there. And we've got some inside scoop. Jimmy's actually was a very good friend of Phil Schneider's. And so we're going to get into his testimony tonight, amongst other stuff. So I hope you guys are ready to go. We're going to get this party started tonight. And please, if you would like to support my work, please go over to my Patreon and become a member of my Patreon. I do appreciate that so much. I have put all of the information for the show tonight. It's all up on my Patreon. I did not post a remote viewing target today. I'll probably put a little extra one in there tomorrow, but I have the entire presentation for tonight's show posted in my Patreon. So thank you to all my Patreon members. I appreciate y'all so much. And if you would like to become a member, if you'd like to check out my work, go over to the cryptidhuntress.com. And you can find all of my scheduled events and stuff. I do speak at a lot of events. And I do a lot of public stuff, a lot of Bigfoot festivals and stuff. It's all over there on my website, y'all. So go check that out. And also my shop is on sale, y'all. War Woman Goods. And I've just gotten some more stuff in. I'm probably going to post it on my website tomorrow. If you guys want to go check out the goods over at War Woman Goods. Okay. All right. Well, I don't want to waste any time. We have a lot to discuss tonight. Jimmy Paine is here. And the last time he came on, we talked about, I guess the last couple of times, we talked about Leatherface and LBJ Ranch and the MIB's training in cattle mutilations in Texas. And tonight we are going to be diving in, like I said, to Dulce Base out of New Mexico. So let's get into this, y'all. Okay. Dulce, New Mexico is located right on the Colorado-New Mexico border. It's a little town, not tiny town, but it's a smaller town with about 3,000 people in the population. It's the tribal headquarters of the Jicarilla Apache Reservation, and it also is the alleged location of the secret underground alien base known as Dulce. Whistleblower Philip Schneider, an explosive engineer and geologist who worked for the U.S. government with high-level security clearances, claimed that in 1979, he participated in the building of a secret underground base in Dulce, New Mexico. He also spoke of encountering 7-foot-tall aliens, which he engaged in gunfire with, losing part of his hand in the process. Now, it has been reported that 60 humans actually lost their lives that day in what now is known as the alien-human battle at Dulce. Now, since then, rumors of alien-human hybrid experiments, animal-alien hybrid experiments, missing people, mad scientists, and ancient AI and other rumored enigmas have been linked to this deep underground secret location. And of course, former MIB agent Jimmy Paine is here to discuss Dulce Base, his friendship with Phil Schneider, and his knowledge of Dulce Zorro Ranch. Y'all know that. That's a buzz term. And the Red Queen, which is featured in Resident Evil. We're going to get into all this tonight. It all is connected and more. Agent Jimmy Paine, super soldier agent Jimmy Paine, aka Dallas, was in a secret space program from 1959 through 1996. During this time, he was a shuttlecraft pilot for the Tall White Warriors at Area 51. He participated in time travel missions with the Montauk Boys at Camp Hero. And he recalls working for the Wayland Corporation, where he encountered a xenomorph, which the movie Aliens was based off of. He was stationed on Mars, Titan, and the Moon as well. He's got a wonderful, very rich background. You guys go check it out. It's in the description box below. Please help me welcome to the show my good buddy, former MIB agent, Mr. Jimmy Paine, who, by the way, you can find a lot of his interviews not only on my channel, but on Super Soldier Talks. Super Soldier Talk with James Rink. Rest in peace to our good friend James. But go check him out. All of the links are in the description box below. Welcome to the show, Mr. Jimmy Paine. Hey, Jimmy.
Hey, Jessica.
Good evening, Jimmy. Thank you for being here tonight.
You're very welcome. I'm glad to be with you tonight.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, you know, Jimmy, we're going through what I like to call a disclosure dump right now in the world. And I covered yesterday a secret meeting that was called amongst some Christian pastors, some ministers that has become public knowledge. And they were actually told that the U.S. government is about to disclose aliens and UFOs in 2026, Jimmy. What do you think about that? Because you've been in this stuff since the 50s?
59 is when my first encounter, back in 59. As far as disclosure, it's the corporations that run Area 51, not the United States government. The United States government just funds it, but it's the corporations that keeps the machines, all the advanced equipment running. So you may have one company that may agree, but 99% of other companies may not agree on disclosure.
Yeah, disclosure is a polarizing topic, actually, when it comes down to the general public versus the disclosure community, I guess. You know, I think it's important that we talk about this stuff and we bring this out to the public. And for a lot of people, it sounds like a science fiction movie, right?
Well, if you've never been there, you know, it would be kind of difficult, but I grew up there, so you know, I'm used to it.
Me too, Jimmy. Coming from the cryptid background and being a Bigfoot field researcher and seeing a bunch of monsters and creatures that aren't supposed to exist, I understand.
I agree, you do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's get into Dulce tonight, Jimmy. I know you and I we did a pre-party to all this a couple of days ago. I guess it was yesterday. And got into Dulce, your friendship with Phil Schneider and all that. I would love to, let's get this party started. Okay. I don't know, where should we begin?
Well, I first met Phil's father, Oscar Schneider, Captain Oscar Schneider. If you go back to the Betty and Barney Hill abduction, I knew I was acquainted with those extraterrestrials at least 4 months prior to their abduction. And one of the individuals that was on that craft was a man dressed in a German SS uniform. And what that was Captain Oscar Schneider. He's basically an observer. And when the little grays go out, you know, they take, particularly their first time out, you know, they have to have an advisor on board to make sure that they're abiding by the rules and regulations. So I met Oscar Schneider, Captain Oscar Schneider, on the spacecraft. He never spoke to me. He just kind of looked at me. I guess he was sizing me up first time I ever seen him. And of course, I was about 6 years old. But that was the first time I met Phil's father. And Phil's father, when he was captured in 1942 by the French, he was deaf. They dropped death bombs on him, and he had to surface a submarine out on the coast of France. And then the French arrest him, turn him over to the Americans. So he was I would say he cooperated with the Americans. So when the war was over, well, before the war was even over, back when the Philadelphia experiment was going on, he was one of the individuals that you know, tested the ship, set up the equipment, stuff of that nature. So he was at Montauk back in the 60s, the early 60s. He was there at least. He was in the United States in 1942, late 1942, 1943. But after the war, I first met him in 1963, 62, I think, is when I met him. Captain.
So Jimmy, so you're saying Phil Schneider's father was a part of this disclosure, a part of these programs, which is kind of common, right? For it to be kind of in the family. I mean, a lot of people that I know that have been part of programs, their fathers were part of some programs, their stepfathers, their parents in some way were part of some of these programs, from what I understand.
Well, when the scientist came over, okay, they used the scientists as much as they could. And, you know, scientists have to have technicians, okay? So as the children of the scientists grew up, to keep it compartmentalized, they just hired the children on to work after their father or their mother. And that's how it, you know, it stayed so long. But I can remember in 62, 63, an American soldier called me, he called me a crock, you know. So, you know, just a German, you know, slang, you know. But they didn't like me, you know. The American soldiers didn't like me because I was of German origin. But I just grew up with it, you know.
Can I ask you a question, Jimmy? Because there's something that I've noticed, and it's in the data for a lot of these missing people out of our national parks. I know we're going to get into that later tonight. But some of those missing people have German backgrounds. A lot of them do, and actually a little, I don't want to say a majority, but some of them are, you know, German background and scientist backgrounds as well. And you know, somebody in the chat was just saying, well, you know, talking about where maybe Dulce is where some of these missing scientists are going. There's been a rash of missing scientists and a lot of people in the disclosure community and scientists that have been working on, UFO propulsion related backgrounds have been either dying or going missing. And do you think there's a connection there?
Well, it could be that just the families of these Germans live in, close to where these facilities are at. And like I said, it's not uncommon for father or son or grandchild to follow in the footsteps. And there could be other issues at play. Maybe Chinese or Russian spies are taking them out. I have to worry about that a lot. Chinese or Russian intelligence going after one of us, and then you have to worry about Israeli intelligence, they're on the American soil. So,
yeah, it's a dangerous time for disclosure advocates right now, Jimmy. I'm just saying, I'm not scared, but I'm just saying it kind of is.
Well, it's how you carry yourself. I always use an alias name. I never show my face. I'm careful what I say. And
I wish I had an alias. Dang it.
I have several aliases.
Yeah.
And I'm used to that because you never really come in from the code. You never really do.
Oh, man. Well, lucky for me, there's a superhero named Jessica Jones. People just assume that I've made up my name and that that's not my real name, Jimmy. So, because Marvel has a superhero named Jessica Jones, who's a psychic, by the way. So, I feel like I'm kind of safe, but not really.
I think you are.
I think I am too. I got my bodyguards around me. I'm good.
I hear that.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, okay. So we've gone kind of through the history of, Phil Schneider, and his father, and how did you meet him? And was it at Dulce or was it before that? How did you guys get to be friends?
Well, out at Area 51, they have like a community house, and this is where when they get off work, they can all meet up on the weekend after work, and being that Area 51 is so remote, you have like a little clubhouse you hang out at when you're off duty on the weekends. And they had a bar in there. And then you have another part of the building, where the family gathers. The men go off into a different part of the building. But first time I met Phil, I think Phil might have been about 15 years old, maybe. And because there's an age difference between me and him. And he was at a bar, drinking a beer at 15 years old. But
don't give away his secrets.
Well, he was just a good fella. He was more mature at that age than most 15-year-olds were. And but I got to knowing him, and I knew his mother, Sally, and she, she knew of me, and Captain Schneider knew of me. But when I grew up, Phil, I was with Phil when he got injured in Vietnam. That's when I got captured. Was when I went out to check on Phil because he was moving around in some shrubs in the jungle, and they shot a mortar off, and it injured him because they didn't know who he was. They couldn't see him. And I went out there by the power plant, and I looked up, and there was the NVA, and I got hit in the head with a rifle butt. And that was the last thing I knew, till I woke up in concentration camp with the French Foreign Legion. But I when I was about, it was back in 1979, I want to say August of 1979. Phil, he worked for a boring company, digging, building deep underground military bases. So Phil, I was working under his security clearance. They were busy trying to get me a security clearance with the company. But I was with him, and I had gone to Los Alamos, and they were going to drill down into the to the earth, to build an underground military base. And when he was drilling, the drill broke through a cavern, and when it did, this black smoke came out, and it smelled horrible, like something dead or rotten, just pitch black smoke. So they had to wait about a day just for it to air out, because you got to let the gases come out, to make sure it's safe to go in. So I was the first one to go down in a miner's elevator, and I got down there. I was taking air samples, and everything looked good. And then Phil came down, and it was just me and him inside the underground cavern. And we was walking into the cavern a little ways, and it was a big rock about the size of a Volkswagen. And I was having to walk around this big rock in this underground cavern. And Phil was behind me, and his headlamp was hitting me from my back, because I'm leading, he's tagging along. But when I was walking around this big boulder, something moved, and Phil caught it with his headlamp, and what it was a gray going around the rock, going to walk up back behind me. And Phil saw it, and Phil pulled his little Walter PK pistol out, 9mm.
PPK.
Yeah.
I got one of those.
Well, that was his favorite pistol.
I mean, I may or may not have one of those. Is what I meant to say.
Yeah. But he shot it, and when he shot it, it startled me. I turned around, looked, and it was a dead gray, at least a 7-foot dead gray laying on the cave floor.
Is it easy to? I gotta ask you. Is it easy to unalive? Because we say unalive on YouTube. Is it easy to unalive one of those things?
They move extremely quick. Maybe 4 times faster than human reflex. So they can sprint real quick if they want to, or they need to. This one wasn't sprinting. He was just easing back around the boulder, trying to get up behind me. And Phil saw it, so Phil shot it. And when he shot it, echoed in the underground chamber. And we were standing there looking at it. We turned, and I was looking at it on the floor, and Phil was looking at it. And out of another cavern, because it had several openings in the cavern, several tunnels. And then another tall gray came out of a side tunnel, and Phil already had his pistol out in his hand, and he shot, and he took the other one out. Okay, so Phil was able to get 2 shots, take 2 of them down. All right, a moment or 2 later, a third one appeared, and this one was ready because he had heard 2 shots, and when Phil saw the third one, he raised his pistol up, and as Phil was raising the pistol up, aiming at the creature. The creature had his hand in front of his chest, and the creature just made a downward motion over his chest. And when he did that, it was like a ball of blue lightning, a ball of like a plasma discharge, and it was like you ever seen someone have a camera and they get in a dark room and they take a picture and it lights up everything? Well,
Yes.
when that creature took his hand and came down across his chest. On his chest, on his left, where his left nipple would be, there was a little box about the size, not much. It was about the size of a box of cards. A little square box was underneath his skin, and there was a little comb coming out, maybe about three inches out of the little box. It was basically some type of a weapon that was sewed into his chest. And when the creature flashed his hand over that little comb, a ball of plasma came out, and it hit Phil, and it blew him clean. It blew him across the room. It opened up his suit. It blew off his shoes. His hand was blew the fingers off his finger, blew the fingers off his hands. Okay, it was just a perfect. It was a perfectly cut. It was no hanging meat. It cauterized when it hit him. The beam of light, when it hit him, it was like it cauterized the flesh like a laser would, and several of Phil's ribs got blowed off or broken, and he had a real bad chest wound from that discharge from that creature. And while I turned and I looked at Phil, and one moment I'm looking at Phil, and I turned my head back towards the creature, and the creature raised his hand again like he was getting ready to go down with it and shoot me. All right, so I was next on the list after about 30 seconds of Phil being on the ground, and my reaction to Phil being on the ground. Then the creature and me locked eyes, and the creature raised his hand up over his chest. He was ready to fire again, and I started to give sign language. I was taught at Area 51 to, see, these creatures can't speak. They don't have the vocal cords to speak. Okay. And you have to get up close to a creature to look into their eyes telepathically. But he was across the room, and I couldn't get close to him because I was scared he was going to shoot me. So the next thing I was going to do was do sign language, hand language, So I tried to communicate with him by sign language like deaf people use. And he was kind of, the creature was kind of perplexed. He probably never knew sign language, but he knew I was trying to communicate. And one minute I would point towards Phil, and then I would fold my arms back to my elbows like I was picking up something, picking up Phil, and then I point my hand towards another tunnel that I had just come from, and then I would point my way back where I came from, and then I would point my finger to the creature, and I point to where he came from, where he could go back. And this went on for about 5, 6, 7 minutes, just slowly but constantly making sign language with him. And he gradually lowered his hand back down, and he just turned and he walked away. And when he turned and walked away, I grabbed Phil and I dragged Phil to the elevator. Okay. And by the time that I had gotten to the miner's elevator, they had heard the shots topside. So the elevator was coming down with a green beret. And when the green beret got down, he opened up the miner's elevator. He stepped out, and we were able to lift Phil up. And I put my arms around Phil's chest. I held him up, and I backed both of us up into the elevator. And he closed the miner's elevator up. It's not very big. It's maybe about a 36-inch, in diameter. It's not very big. And I was able, to hit the button and go up topside holding Phil. And as soon as I got Phil topside, of course, he was injured real bad, Jessica. And there was like 66 Green Berets. They went down, and every one of those soldiers got killed except two. One was a Canadian, and there was another individual that went down. But the Canadian went back to Canada, and Phil stayed in the hospital for about a year, and he tried to contact that soldier several years later, but the Canadian government wouldn't let him, communicate with him.
Jimmy, I'm actually showing the audience right now pictures of Phil Schneider and his hand, where his fingers are actually missing. If you guys can pay attention to these pictures and his chest, you can see a scar that goes from his bottom of his throat down to his belly button.
He wore a plastic shield over his ribs because it blew the ribs out of his body, 3 or 4 of his ribs out of his body.
Wow.
He didn't have no ribs on his left side. It just disintegrated the ribs, shattered the ribs.
So Jimmy, to be clear, okay, because see, I got to admit, I've listened to Phil Schneider's testimony before, but I didn't pay as much attention to it as I did today. And this man is you talk about a patriot, a United States patriot. This man was a true patriot to the United States. He loved this country.
Well, his father never told the family that he was a German U-boat captain, and but Phil knew it. Phil had a brother. I think his name was Jerry, but I can't remember because it's so long ago. I was more familiar with Phil and Oscar, and but Phil did love this country because he was raised in this country. This is the only country he knew. But his father, Oscar, was German, and he was very talented. He could take a block of aluminum and go in a machine shop and build a watch out of a lathe. He was just that good at doing stuff like that.
I was actually pretty surprised listening to his interviews. And by the way, if anyone listening tonight would like to check out his last lecture that he gave before he died, he did die under mysterious circumstances, by the way, and a lot of people do believe that he was unalived for speaking out, right, Jimmy?
I found Phil in the apartment.
You did?
I found him. I'm the one that found him. And I do know who's responsible. But again, it goes back. This is not a civil matter anymore. It's a government issue. The Phil's murder was very tragic. There was no reason to do that to him. He would not have lived that much longer. And I want to say another thing. Phil was backing Preston Nichols. Now, Preston Nichols had built a prototype time machine, and the last time that I saw Phil, he called me, and he wanted me to come up to New York, Long Island, and I said, Phil, I got no money. He said, well, don't worry about it. I'm going to buy you a plane ticket, everything. And so I went up to Preston Nichols' lab with Phil.
Mm-hmm.
And Phil, was diabetic. He's real weak. He said, look, I got to get something to eat because my blood sugars were crashing. I said, fine, you go and go get something to eat, and I'll be in the lab evaluating the time machine with Preston while you're, eating and taking your medicine and everything. So he left. And I was in the lab with Preston Nichols looking at this time machine, evaluating the prototype. And we turned it on. But when we did, we had like about 7 flying saucers that came over his lab. And the flying saucers were there. It startled me. It was so how quick the flying saucers got there. Within 30 or 45 seconds of cutting this machine on, we had 7 flying saucers over the lab. And but what happened was the flying saucers left, and then 4 black SUVs rode up with tinted windows. And a bunch of guys jumped out, and they came to the door, and they said they wanted in. I said, I'm not letting you in. And so they bust on in, and me and Preston got into a fist fight with these 7 or 8 guys, and 4 of them jumped on me. And then once I was pinned down, and handcuffed, the other ones jumped on. They just ganged up on Preston, and I guess they knocked Preston out. I think they tased Preston. That's what they did. They tased Preston, and but they ended up. By the time Phil got back, the time machine was gone, and Preston had no memory that he had been tased behind his ear by these men. But I know who did it, who was the reason, who's responsible for this, for Preston, for Phil's death. I know who did it. Yeah.
Well, you know what I found really interesting, Jimmy, it was that when I was listening to Phil Schneider's testimony today, he actually had Al Bielek. That was one of his good friends. That was his good friend and a colleague. And he was also a part of this Montauk project and the Philadelphia experiment and all this stuff, the same things that you were a part of.
Yeah, now Al was more closer to Captain Oscar Snyder.
Oh,
then,
okay.
Okay. See, the 2 men worked together. Captain Oscar Snyder and Al Bielek knew each other personally. And then when Phil got old enough, Phil went and talked to Al Bielek, and Al Bielek told him everything that was what went on with the Philadelphia experiment, and kind of took him under his wing. He was Al was bringing Phil to these events and let him speak. And the 2 men became relatively close. They became relatively close together.
Wow. I was actually shocked because I think maybe originally when I listened to Phil Schneider's testimony, I didn't know who Al Bielek was. But now that I've been such a part of all this stuff, and I've gone to Montauk, and there's even ties to what we're talking about tonight, to even the USS Eldridge. And Al Bielek claimed to be been on the USS Eldridge, I believe.
He did. I knew Al when he was relatively a young man, um, and Al's more of a company man. He was. I think he was more close to. Um, he was more close to the program than I was because he was there all throughout it. Now,
Mhm.
I came in 1962 is when I first started becoming available for the Montauk boys. So they like
Mhm.
to get a Montauk boy real young. And you go through MK Ultra when you're 5 years old. And then when you're 6 years old, they get you ready for becoming a Montauk boy. But at 5 years old, I was more over at uh, Monica, Pennsylvania, um, um, with over at Monica, Pennsylvania, with
Hmm.
Captain Joseph Mengele.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Wow.
I grew up under Captain Joseph Mengele. I mean, a lot of people say a lot of bad things about Captain Mengele, but me and him got along okay. You know.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, he gets a bad rap because he was actually doing all these experiments with humans and maybe it's some chimeras or animal human stuff, right? If I'm not mistaken.
He knew the truth about the royal family not being all human, and the 1,500 test subjects that was Auschwitz were not all human. Um, some of them had web hands, web feet, but what gave them away was the blood. The blood was not human. The blood was looked more like octopus blood, and but they could pass for human if you looked at them. But that's the only test subjects that were killed were the ones that had the blood of an octopus. It's not normal for a human to have octopus blood. Okay,
No.
that's how they determine if it's human or not. Now there are some that have, you know, deformed, may have a deformed hand or deformed foot, but when the blood is not of human blood, then they know it's not all human.
Oh man. Well, let's kind of circle back around to Dulce, okay, and Dulce Base because it is rumored that they are doing the most horrific experiments on humans, and there could be even ties to these missing people out of our national parks. There, Jimmy. Uh,
Well, let's go back to Dulce a little bit here.
okay.
Now, I admit I'm a clone human. I know I'm cloned, and a clone carries the memories of the original occupant of the body. Okay. Now, how these extraterrestrials gain control of society? They look for the higher ups in society, like kings or queens or a president. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times, you vote. I'm not going to say anybody's name, but you vote for a certain individual, and they get in office, and then they do the very opposite.
All of them. They all
Yeah,
do that, Jimmy.
yeah. But what that is just they're installing their clone, to carry out the wishes of. And if the clone doesn't do it, the clone disposed of, and another clone takes its place. You know. Uh, Now, when I came about, they could grow a body in 4 to 5 months. Now they can do it a lot quicker. Okay, they can do it a lot quicker. But I was born. If you watch the Matrix movie, where uh, you know Nemo comes out of a a pod with a bunch of hoses connected to them.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty real, except for the neck part. Where you plug into the neck to program. You don't have that. I don't know why they put that in there, but they can grow bodies in pods now, artificial wounds, and they can if they clone you, they can grow your body in 4 to 5 months. Well, it may be even sooner now, but it used to take 4 to 5 months to grow a body.
Wow, that's pretty quick. Okay. And I've always had a lot of questions about clones, and we talk about clones pretty often. I have.
Well, let me say this now. Little grays don't have sex organs.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Their bodies are grown. They're disposable bodies, okay? And what they do, they can transfer the soul to another body. It's through computers. Okay. Now, right now, the government is experimenting on a living AI. So they're trying to take your thoughts, your brain patterns, and program it into a computer, and then transfer it into another living entity. The little grays have perfected that.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're just trying to back engineer it. Go ahead.
I remember when you and Misha were on the show last time, and we were talking about how the grays don't actually eat with their mouths. They absorb nutrients through, taking a bath in blood and stuff like that.
Well, let me say this, Jessica. Your tongue, you taste things with your tongue, right?
Usually, yes.
Yeah, if you bite in something that's sweet, you can taste with your tongue. Well, the only difference is that the body of a little gray is like his whole outside skin is like that tongue.
Sensory overload. Okay.
Yeah. In other words, if you put something bitter in your mouth, you immediately spit it out. Well, a little gray doesn't have to put food in his mouth. It can just get the nutrients on his arms, his leg, his back, his torso. It absorbs through the skin, just like your tongue absorbs. Okay. Now they don't defecate. Now, just like you sweat, it'll sweat, and it sweats out the urine and the fecal matter as well. And then they brush their skin. That's like them defecating. They brush their skin off, like flaky skin.
Mm-hmm.
But how they take their nutrients, they go into a special shower, and the nutrients are put into a shower head, and they shower, and that's cleaning their bodies, and it's also replenishing them.
Wow, that's interesting. This is kind of off topic a little bit, but I've always wondered, why there are not bathrooms in some of these old world buildings we hear about, and I'm wondering if maybe just the bodies were made different back then. I don't know. I don't know. It's just an ongoing question. Why were there no bathrooms in all these old cathedrals and old world buildings? Okay, so something to think about.
Well, they didn't have plumbing back then,
Well, that's true too.
But that's humans building that, okay?
Right.
But
Could be something else though.
Well, until you've been around a little gray, you don't really understand it. I understand it, okay? I understand it. The first little gray that I really became pretty good friends with was Sweetie. Now, back in 1947, the Roswell crash, Sweetie was just a little baby in there, okay? And they took Sweetie out of the wreckage. And there were like 4 Army, Air Force females. And they raised Sweetie, okay? And see, Sweetie gets a little confused because she doesn't have boobs. she sees a female with boobs, but Sweetie doesn't have boobs. See, they take on the personality of whoever raises them. If a male raises them, then it takes on the personality of a male. If a female raises them, they take on the personality of a female. Okay. Now, what made the people so nervous about the 1947 Roswell crash is that when they went into the spacecraft, they found human bodies in there cut up, like they had been dissected. And what that extraterrestrial crew was doing, they were abducting people and dissecting them like a lab. And that's why it freaked everybody out at Roswell Army Air Force Base. They went into a lockdown, and they gathered the parts up from the wreckage. I've actually handled some of the old Roswell wreckage that was in a storage room, when I was growing up. Some of the actual wreckage. But I knew Sweetie, and Sweetie came out of the wreck. And of course, Sweetie stands about 3 feet tall, and she has a little tricycle, and she would pedal her tricycle down the hall to my office. And her duty was, Sweetie likes flowers. She likes to sniff flowers. And she would go around and put flowers in all the rooms of all the workers. And of course, when flowers got old, she'd bite into them, bite the heads off of them, chew them, but she couldn't digest them. But that was just something that a little interesting thing about her. But one day, there was a real bad thunderstorm, and I was in the barracks with some tall, they're hybrids, they're white males, but they're crossed with tall grays,
Mm-hmm.
Others, they're hybrid humans. And Sweetie was staying with an Air Force colonel's daughter. And the little girl was scared of Sweetie. And it was lightning, So Sweetie freaked out and started running. And she ran into the barracks where I was at. And she ran over by my rack. And she grabbed me by my arm. And that's not a good thing, because when she grabbed me by my arm, it's telepathic. And she looked me dead in the eye, and everywhere Sweetie had been in that spacecraft, instantly it was a download, a mental download of all the creatures that she has seen in her life. So I carry Sweetie's memories with me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you got a major download. That is interesting, because that is kind of like how telepathy works. I do a lot of work in the remote viewing field, I guess you could say. And I've been training in that for decades. And we, you do get downloads from people. You can get downloads from experiences. You get a download from touching somebody or just being in their energy, in their presence. And so that's interesting that you're saying that.
Well, so they can't talk. Well, they can communicate, but it sounds like a squirrel barking, like a real low barking from a squirrel bark. But to communicate with a little gray, you have to look them in the eyes, telepathic. Okay, you have to get up close and look them dead in the eye, and that's how they, they communicate with you, Jessica.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I feel like the head of my Bigfoot research team did train us all in remote viewing, so that we could have that edge on, because he always said all roads lead back to ETs when it comes to the Bigfooting stuff and all the things, the encounters we have with cryptids. A lot of times they do have a connection to extraterrestrials or ultra terrestrials, and there's just a connection there. So it's good to be able to try to get on their level on a communication basis.
Well, Whitney Strieber, is that his name? Whitney?
Yes.
Yeah.
Whitley. Whitley.
Yeah. I've met him before. I spent the night on his couch when he was having all the problems with the Greys, and I've met his Greys before, and I've been around his group of Greys before. They're a little bit on the wild side, but I have been around them. So I know he's telling the truth. You know, you see him on these podcasts talking, but I know where he's coming from. Yeah, it's true. I've met his little Greys before. Go ahead.
I'm so excited. I've got my friend Ed Peters in the chat. What's up, Ed? He knows about my original group, Enigma Research Group. Yes. I think that the Enigma Research Group has been scrubbed off the internet since I went public. But anyway, thank you, Ed. Thank you for being here tonight. Yes. You know, and that's another thing too. Like, Jimmy, you know, the things that we're talking about, you know, a lot of the people that I do research with are not public about this because it is so dangerous. It really is. And you know, and my condolences go out to you. I know you're good friends with Phil, and you found him deceased. And that's, I mean, it was ruled an unaliving, a self-deletion, as they say. I know on YouTube we have to be careful about what we say, but he had done it himself. But I mean, it was clearly not, from what I understand. I mean, he was silenced.
The reason I went black, when Phil Schneider's, when I found Phil, that's when I stopped. I went underground. I've been underground ever since the date that I found Phil. Because I know who did it. Okay. And if I ever return to Area 51, I'm going to seek justice for that. Because the man was ill. He didn't have much longer to live. And it's directly tied to 9/11, the World Trade Center going down.
Oh.
Yeah. Phil's death is tied to the World Trade Center.
What year did Phil die? I don't even remember.
I want to say it was 95 when he died. And then 96 is kind of when I started. I think around 96 is when I went ahead and started getting, you know, quiet. And then at 97, it was totally silent at that point. But see, you have to remember, I'm of German origin. I'm paperclip.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And a lot of the inventions from World War II are still classified. Now, the government says they released the last little bit of classified information from World War II just 2 or 3 years ago. That's not so. There's a lot of inventions from World War II that's still classified. See, before Germany.
Oh, sorry, Jimmy. I was going to just real quickly, I do have this up on the screen. It says Phil Schneider died in 1996, reportedly from a stroke while involved in a gun battle, which some believed was a suicide.
No, that's incorrect information. That's incorrect. Don't believe what you're reading there.
I'm suspicious of everything.
Yeah, no, that's disinformation. Well, it may just be that somebody's got their information turned around a little backwards, you know, but that's not correct. No, it's not correct. See, before Germany fell, they know there was going to fall, and a lot of that advanced technology was transferred out of the country. A lot of it went to Antarctica.
Oh, very interesting. Very interesting.
See, for every weapon you saw that was left, there was a more advanced one that was taken out and brought to Antarctica.
Wow. Very interesting.
If I return to Antarctica, there's a library that's under the ice. I want to go to the library and look at some of the inventions in the library.
Hmm.
So there's a library in Antarctica under the ice.
Oh, really?
Nobody knows about. Nobody knows about it.
Jimmy,
At base 211. Go ahead.
I have a question. What do you think Buzz Aldrin was talking about when he said he tweeted out something? I think he might have had a heart attack. He has some kind of health problem in Antarctica, and he said he sent out a tweet that said it's worse than evil itself or something like that. What was Buzz Aldrin talking about?
Well, Buzz is a very emotional person. You know, you have to look at his age, his health. He's been through a lot. All right. And there's some things going on in Antarctica that people will be very surprised to know about. There's extraterrestrials in Antarctica. Underneath the ice, there's thermal pools that are warm, you know, but it's deep under the ice. There's volcanic activity underneath the ice, warm springs and such. But you have to get down real deep. I've been to the base once before, but it was real long ago. I was very young, you know.
Mhm.
And I believe that if I ever do go back, I would probably request that the base be opened or get access to the base because I'm of German blood.
Wow, that is a place where not a lot of people are welcome, Jimmy.
Well,
Normal people are not invited to Antarctica.
well, on the American base, yeah, but not on German base. I'm of German origin. Okay, it would be up under the German base, not the American base.
That would make more sense, Jimmy. That would make sense.
Well, it's kind of like you have another base adjacent to the American base. Okay, that's what I'm saying
Okay.
there. You know.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, there's a lot of hidden underground bases, and I know I've covered some of the German bases that are in Antarctica. I mean, admittedly, like there's all sorts of hidden technology, maybe hidden civilizations down there. You name it, it's down there. Um,
Well, like I said, for every advanced weapon you saw that was in Germany, that was left there is substandard. The most advanced weapons are in Antarctica. The
wow,
most advanced ones. Yeah.
interesting. Interesting. Well, I think you and I had talked about before, getting back to like New Mexico and Dulce, we talked about the volcano tubes out west, right? The volcano tubes and stuff like that.
The lava tubes.
Lava tubes. That's it. Lava tubes. That's what they're called.
Well, if you go back a couple million years, the Southwest was very active geologically, okay? And Mexico has more volcanoes than any other state, but they're ancient volcanoes that's weathered down, and the mountains have eroded. But for that much energy to push that much rock up, it's hollow down there. It's like catacombs. And these lava tubes are very rigid, and they've had no water, no sun, or no wind blowing on them. So there's a lot of caverns underneath New Mexico, parts of Arizona, but mostly New Mexico, you know,
Hmm.
a lot of them.
Okay.
Now going back to Dulce, New Mexico, I've been in that base. I'm going to tell you the first time that I entered it. I might have been about 14 years old, maybe. My intelligence officer brought me down there, and he he knew of an opening in the side of the mesa. So we got some rappelling rope, and we tied it on a I think it was around a rock. We tied it, and I rappelled down the side of the mesa and was able to get into a little cave on opening inside the rocks. And I got in there, and when I got inside the cave, I found some Indians that were mummified, and apparently they had a fight in there with the little grays. And I found a little gray with an arrow through his chest and pulled it out. And there was a big boater. I guess they had rowed the boater over the little cave opening, you know,
Uh-huh.
and sealed it up. The Indians did. But before they get it sealed up, a couple of little grays got out, and they were fighting in there. But I took the arrow back to the Navy, and they said, yeah, we knew about the cave. We've been knowing about that cave since 1937. So the Navy knew that there was an underground base there as early as 1937. Because I showed them the arrow that I pulled out of the little gray, out of the little gray's chest, and I told them about the dead Indians I found in there. And he said, "Yeah, there's another way in. That's one of the ways, but it's been blocked off. But there's another way in." And so the naval intelligence officer told my intelligence officer, "Well, there's an easier way to get into it." And then they brought me in the regular way into it, and I went in there, and I worked in there for a while, you know, underground. That's when I got to meet Thomas Costello. Now, Thomas Costello was in charge of security at the Dulce Base.
We actually I have a link to an interview that he did in the description box. So after the show tonight, y'all go click on that link, and you can hear his interview about working at Dulce.
Well, right before he came up missing, there was a lot of disturbing things going on. You know, he was talking to my intelligence officer about it. Of course, I was still in training at that time, only 14, 15 years old. And, but he was going to get some tapes out and some papers out. They called the Dulce papers. And he was with another female. I think her name was Cherry Hertz was her name. Now, I don't know Cherry Hertz. I just know that she was with him during that time period. I think she's an investigator. She lived in Los Angeles down by the cliffs, you know, the hilly part. And she kind of disappeared back in the 80s, somewhere back in the 80s, early 90s. She kind of disappeared. And rumor was that reptilians were showing up at her house, you know, scaring her and scaring her children, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And but Thomas buried the tapes and the documents out in the desert. And me and my intelligence officer went out there. We looked around. We spent most of the day looking for where he thought they may have hid it. We never could find the tapes of, you know, of the pictures or anything. And then that's when Thomas came up missing. Nobody has seen Thomas since then. Since the time I went out there and spent most of the day up into the night looking for the tapes, he came up missing, and no one's seen him since.
Well, Jimmy, he was actually known to have gotten pictures, photographs out of Dulce. And this is allegedly one of those pictures of human-looking humanoids in pods. And look,
Yeah.
if you scroll down, it says verified hoax. Okay, verified
Well,
hoax.
well, before you verify something, now, I said if you watch the movie uh, Matrix, how I came out the tank. Now that's where I'm more familiar with is the tank.
Uh-huh.
Now these pictures here shows it. They're in bags. Uh, I can't vouch for that picture. I know that picture is circulating on the web, but what I remember coming out of was a pod that had this jelly-like substance on it, and
Mhm.
uh, and I pulled the tubes off of my skin, and I had maybe 4 tubes on each leg, and I had tubes in my chest, and um, had one I say on my neck, in biblical cords that pulled off relatively easy, and I remember saying what's happened to me, and and then I started remembering, that the trauma, my death, and everything. But but yeah, they can transfer your soul to another body, and just like they do little grays, they can do humans, and I'm a clone human.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's it's so interesting, Jimmy. And I want to take a quick commercial break if you don't mind. I want to thank, we've gotten some super stickers and some, wanted to recognize our supporters tonight. Everybody in the chat's a supporter. Thank y'all so much for all being here tonight. But Bobby Singleton, thank you so much for gifting those Cryptid Huntress Hunt Club memberships tonight. That is so kind of you. And also I wanted to thank Yvonne. Thank you so much. Uh, Thank you for the super sticker tonight and for your support. And Kent Baxter, I saw Kent had to go to bed, y'all. I know it's a work night, okay? And but he said, I want to thank Jimmy for coming on tonight and talking about this. Yes, thank you to Jimmy. That was very gracious of Jimmy to come on with us tonight. Thank you, Kent, for that, and I appreciate that. So yeah, I just wanted to thank them real quick, Jimmy, and we can get back to our Dulce conversation here. And I have a question for you, Jimmy. Uh, there's been a lot of disclosure on the Epstein files. Okay. And I know that they're not too far from where Dulce is allegedly, well, I know Dulce, the town, I know where that is, but they say that there may be connections to those files that were released and Dulce Base. And we're talking about these human alien hybrids and animal human hybrids and animal alien hybrids. Could there have been some sort of a DNA connection, some kind of genetic connection to places like the Zorro Ranch, particularly?
There's very disturbing connections, Jessica. If when we reviewed the Resident Evil movie, I don't know, can you pull those pictures up while we're talking? Um, the Resident Evil movie has got some truth based on it. Now, it's not a documentary. I'm familiar with the Red Queen. The Red Queen is an advanced AI computer, and I have been in it, down into the base. I've been to Raccoon City. Now, the reason they call it Raccoon City was when I was there, I walked down a tunnel and I set off a sensor, and I got arrested, and brought back out, and the supervisor had to, tell me you don't go down certain tunnels unless you have clearance. But while I was there, I got to, work knowing my way around, but not going off of any tunnel that didn't have a sign on it. But what happened was one day a mama raccoon and 4 raccoon babies got into the caverns, and it walked down the the tunnel, and it didn't set off any alarms. So we know that if you get down real low, you can get in without setting an alarm off. Well, we just called it Raccoon City. And like I said, if you watch the movie Resident Evil, they'll talk about Raccoon City. Now, if you go back to Dulce, there's a building that's vacant. We would go in, and then there's a petition, a false wall that we could open up, and there's a stairway that goes down underneath the ground, and then there's a train down there you get in, and the train, the tracks are like at about a 45-degree angle, a 30 to 45-degree angle, and it goes down a couple of miles, and you go down into the hive. So I've been in the hive and everything.
The hive. Is that where the Red Queen is? This is like an ancient AI, correct?
No, it's a modern AI.
Modern AI.
It's a modern AI. Now, as I said, the movie is it's not all the way accurate, but it's got a lot of truth to it. There is creatures down there that are in tanks that are being grown. They have alien DNA, human DNA, animal DNA. It's all mixed up. It's all mixed up.
Ooh. Well, I had asked you about the possible connections to the Zorro. Now, people who have been following the release of the Epstein files, they've heard about Zorro Ranch. Now, that place sounds like a really bad place. But it seems as though there might have been some DNA taken out of some of these young children or young women there. Were those used to, don't say?
You're exactly right. Now, from the ranch to Los Alamos is 40 miles by air. You can do that in 30 minutes by helicopter or maybe 20 minutes by turbojet. So you spend more time taking off and landing a turbojet, getting there. But they would collect the soil samples, not the soil, but the sperm and the eggs from the guest, and they would also blackmail. Had cameras up into the rooms. They blackmail politicians. Financial individuals in the finance world, and once they start to blackmail them, they also get a sample of the sperm or the eggs. A lot of the young girls, their eggs were harvested and taken to the underground base, and there the eggs are subject to generic experimentation. So they're growing not all humans mixed with other DNA.
Ooh. Yes, Don, the pictures that I was just showing, that is what's known as Zorro Ranch. Now, if you go look it up online, because I was trying to find it, Jimmy and I were trying to locate this on a map yesterday, and it's actually called something different. Okay, it's got another name on Google Earth and stuff. So you can find it if you look online. I can't remember the name of it. It's Sand something. Okay. But just look that up. This is what is known as Zorro Ranch. Okay. And you can see it looks like a helicopter landing right there. Maybe that's their garden. I don't know. But
well, that's one of the properties he owns. He owns several properties now.
Okay. Well, we've got these really disturbing pictures that are from and I wanted to warn the audience before I show these, because I think these came out with the Podesta files, maybe. I don't know. Back a few years ago, there was an artist. Some of these honestly politicians, some of these kind of darker politicians were following, and this woman was famous for making human-animal hybrid art. Okay, and Jimmy, if it's okay with you, I'll show a couple of these pictures.
Yeah,
of some of because this could be. Now, I want to warn the audience: this is for entertainment purposes only, and these pictures are quite disturbing. I've actually put a sensor cloud over the lower half of one of these sloth children. Okay, because this is weird stuff, but this is the kind of art that it's almost, some people would call this satanic, Jimmy.
What they're doing, they're taking a real image of what's down there, and they make it into wax figures. Okay,
Yeah.
that's a wax figure of a real image, a real human. Well, not human. It looks like it's part human, part sloth. But it's that's an image of the real thing.
Yeah.
Down there.
That is disturbing, to say the least. And the fact that they're actually interjecting that, interposing it, I don't know what the word is, juxtaposing that with a real child, okay, a model of a real child. Is that what they're doing down there? Are they exposing actual children, real human children, to these experiments?
Yeah. Show the other picture of the parasite growing out. Now, what you're seeing there, like you go back to Resident Evil, where they put the parasite on the human, once that parasite is on you, it injects you with alien DNA, and eventually the child will die. But as you got little sloths trying to grow out the skin of the child.
Oof. That is so disturbing. And I did take the time to really examine that picture and that art, the art. And there's actually animals coming out of its skin. I mean, talk about parasites. That's something that Phil Schneider talked about. And like I said, I want to reiterate, this is for entertainment purposes only. But he was very vocal about the parasite class, as I like to call them, the elite. And we're talking about parasites. It's almost like a representation of the parasite class on humanity right there. That's what I think.
Well, when I was on the Nostromo, the spacecraft Nostromo, when I worked for the Weyland Corporation, Weyland-Yutani Corporation, we had a xenomorph, that face hugger, that attached itself to one of our crew members. And then a few hours later, it busted out of his chest. It was using his lung as a host, and it killed him. So these creatures that we're seeing, these extraterrestrial creatures, what they're trying to do, they want to come to our planet. Either our planet's it's got too much sunlight, or their atmosphere may not be right for it, but it's trying to interbreed with us, where it can come here and take over. And when going back to this Dulce Base, the aliens may want to share information, give us technology, but it's only till if they can crossbreed another species that can take our atmosphere or our sunlight or our temperature, then it's going to take over. It has no more use for us.
Is that ultimately what they're doing? Is this a part of the transhumanist movement to make all of these hybrids and stuff?
Well, yes, but see, some extraterrestrials are childlike. They don't mean us no harm. But there's other extraterrestrials that have a much darker reason to be here. We don't really understand why they want to be here, okay? Those are the ones that you don't really understand. Not all extraterrestrials are bad. Some are our allies, some are beneficial, but some have a much darker reason to be here. And the deal is that we're trying to learn as much as we can from them, but eventually at some point, it's going to come down to either them or us. It's an uneasy alliance. Go ahead.
I'm Team Human, Jimmy. Team Human, all the way. And I'm okay. Listen, I think that some of us in this chat tonight were probably aliens. Some of us are clones. We got werewolves in here too. I know for sure. Okay, so not everybody's 100% human, and if we were clones, we wouldn't know probably half of us. Okay, but I wanted to ask you something else about uh, your connection also with Oppenheimer and stuff. Did you want to get into that now, or do we want to cover some more stuff before we move on to that?
We can do Oppenheimer.
Okay.
Now, when I was a little boy at Camp Hero, it took a tremendous amount of energy just to produce a wormhole. And the wormhole wasn't very big, Jessica. It would be about as tall as your chin. It looked like a little tornado when it opened up. And you couldn't get a full-size person in it, but you could get a little kid in it. And we would run like you go swimming. You have a diving board, and you run out to the diving board and you bounce on it, and it lifts you up, and then you dive into a pool. Well, that was a lot like how we did it at Camp Hero. We'd run and jump into this hole. But when I was on the Eldritch, we had a malfunction, and it caught, like I said, the ship caught on fire, and the men were burned into the steel, stuck into the steel. And I put the fire out on the Eldritch, and I've done several jumps through the years, more than one jump, many jumps, trying to unfreeze the control panels. But on my last jump, like I said, where the men got stuck in the steel, when I got off of it, I was traumatized. And, Jolly West was my psychiatrist. He evaluated me. And Jolly West said, well, he's young, he'll grow out of it, just give him time, and explain to him why the men were stuck in the steel. But they ended up, when I was at Kirkland Air Force Base, they ended up bringing me to Los Alamos Base. Now, Los Alamos Base back in '67 was closed up. It had been closed up for many years. And they brought me up there. The base had no power to it. And when the plane landed, they unloaded a generator, and they had coolers filled with food and everything. And once they landed at the airport and unloaded the generator, they got it to a house back on Peach Street on the base. And they hooked up the generator, and they put the food in the refrigerator. And I spent the night there on the couch. But in a day or so, I met my teacher. And this man came to the door. He's a rather tall man, thin, had a hat on. And he knocked on the door, and my teacher opened up. Well, not my teacher, my intelligence officer opened the door up. And he shook the man's hand, and the man stepped in, and he told the man, he said, "This is Jimmy Paine." And then he said, "Well, this man here is going to be your teacher. His name is Dr. Robert Oppenheimer." Now, that was the first time I met, Robert Oppenheimer. He had simply returned home to his old home, and he was going to be my teacher. And he taught me up to the time that he died. He died of cancer. and I was his last student. And so I learned all about physics from Dr. Robert Oppenheimer.
Now, he was credited with some kind of production with atomic bombs, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, he was the head scientist over Los Alamos. He was inspirational in getting it built, and he got all the scientists there. And there was a security issue at the base, and there was some people arrested and put in prison, and a couple was executed. Rosenballs, I think, were their name.
Oh, yeah. Were they spies? Is that what that
They,
was?
yeah. Now,
I
when I was there, I actually found some plutonium under a floorboard that they had left many years earlier, and I found I want to say it was either two. It was two plutonium cores underneath a loose floorboard, and I told my intelligence officer, and they got the military to get some a lead box, put them in, and apparently they never was able to get the actual physical spears out. What they did was just get the paperwork out, but they were unable to sneak the two plutonium spears out. And that was recovered in 1967. That we recovered two plutonium spears underneath a board underneath the floor of a hut. Excuse
That
me.
is so dangerous, Jimmy. Plutonium, that is what some people, even some disclosure advocates that I know, I actually know someone personally who has passed away, who some people suspect that this person got plutonium poisoning at a conference by the government agencies potentially.
Well, I kind of, like I said, years later, because I knew I had the formula to a new, he was teaching me about, atomic weapons and everything. But years later, when I met my first Vulcan, I got my old notebook, and he was very excited to see it, and that we invented the first proton torpedo. We hid it from the Navy, but we actually had a proton torpedo at Creech Air Force Base in a warehouse, but it was removed by the Vulcans because it was very dangerous. So I'm the co-inventor of the proton torpedo.
Whoa, that's really cool. Jimmy, I know this is kind of off topic, but there's been several people asking about the Mona Lisa from Apollo 20, and you had personal contact with Mona Lisa EBE, and yeah, can we talk about that for just a second, just because everybody's so interested in that?
Yeah, I went to the moon. I knew William Rutledge, and I went to the moon, and I'm the one that brought Mona Lisa back. And Mona woke up on me on the way back because, when she gets a lot of oxygen, she wakes up. And I remember last thing I remember of Mona, she got right up in my lap and put her nose next to my nose. And that's the only thing I remember after that. But I only had 2 times in my life I have missing time. And one was when I went down into a crater in the moon. Apparently, I was dragging a cosmonaut out, and a tall gray followed me out that was down in the crater. And of course, the tall gray asked me not to come back. They didn't want us there on the moon. And I was the one that they told, we don't want to see you back on the moon. And I said, well, we didn't know that anybody was here. And like I said, I retrieved a dead cosmonaut out of the the crater. That was only that was one or two times that I have missing time. Is when I was down in the crater, and then when Mona woke up on me and got into my face.
Okay, Jimmy, I got to tell you. All right, so I know they say remote viewers aren't supposed to remote view the moon and all this stuff. I mean, well, when I was learning remote viewing, that was one of my practice targets. Was that crashed spaceship actually in the crater on the dark side of the moon? I believe it's the same one.
Yeah, I've been in it. I've been all up in that spacecraft, and
Well,
the writing.
I was just going to say that I can stand behind that. That is a real craft. It was crashed there. I had a whole team of us that remote viewed that on a blind target. So I believe you, Jimmy. I do believe it.
Well, the symbols are good luck symbols on the outside of the craft. When I was channeling my younger years, so I wasn't supposed to know about the craft, the spacecraft. Apollo 10 was the one that took the picture, the first picture of it. It was Apollo 10 that actually found it. And then when I was doing my channeling out at Holloman Air Force Base, channeling spirits, and of course there was, rain in the dorm, doors slamming shut, and people seeing apparitions, and but anyway, they called a priest on me and said, "Hey, we're going to give you exorcism." Oh Lord, and they're going to give me exorcism.
How many exorcisms have you had, Jimmy? That's the question. Just kidding.
Well, the priest looked at me and says, "Well, these things happen, and the people at the base didn't understand me." Said, "Well, kid, what did you bring back with you from Vietnam?" Because I never would talk to nobody. I was, just a kid, coming back, troubled, like, the war, the killings and everything. So they're going to send me to Dr. Lovelace up in Albuquerque. And I got up there, Dr. Lovelace was the same doctor. See, all astronauts have to go see Dr. Lovelace. And when I was talking to him, he started asking about channeling, He said, "How long you been doing it?" I said, "Well, I've been doing it since about 6, 7 years old, And so I was telling him about all the different spirits that I channeled. And one of them, I was talking about Mona. And I started drawing out pictures of, these strange symbols. Well, he immediately recognized it was the symbols on that spacecraft. And see, nobody's supposed to know it. And then, yeah. And then he said I went to him a time or two, but when I went back to Holloman Air Force Base, not long after I was at Holloman Air Force Base, I got a knock on the dorm door, and this guy came in, and he said, "Hey, kid, you want a job with transportation?" I said, "Sure." Next thing I know, I'm over in Africa, and that's where I met William Rutledge at. And so all the astronauts that was on that mission was atheists except one, that was me. And the only reason they picked me, they said, "Well, you've got the religion of the savage." And the reason they wanted atheists was like, if you were to meet another alien astronaut, they didn't want you to get on your knees like praise him as a god. Yeah.
Interesting.
So they picked me, but I was the only one that had spiritualism, but it was Native American. So I take that of the Paiute and some of the Shoshone religion.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we do hear about, people that are going to be in these underground bases like Dulce and, signing contracts, go down there, NDAs. I've heard that they sign it to say they will not say the name Jesus Christ down there. I mean, is that true?
Well, you have to remember, Jessica, when you really get exposed to it, it kind of shatters your psyche. You ask yourself, who am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? And you look, why am I here? You know what I mean? It's a spiritual issue. Now, some people become atheist. Look at who was it we were talking about the other night? Colonel Aquino.
Oh yeah, Michael.
Yes,
Is it Michael Aquino?
Michael
Him?
Aquino.
The guy with the
Yeah,
eyebrows.
yeah.
Yeah.
He was an atheist, a true atheist. Now, a lot of people become atheist, but when I was coming up, one of the MIB said he knew of the Paiute tribe, and they thought it'd be good for me to spend time with the Paiutes. And so I would go to the sweat lodges, and they would give me spiritual guidance and everything. So I'm spirit. I was born Roman Catholic, but when I became exposed to ETs, it shattered me. But the Native Americans were the ones that taught me spiritualism, and so I take that Paiute, Native American Paiute, Shoshone, and to a lesser degree Apache religion, spiritualness. Because I've been, like I said, you get over to Holloman Air Force Base, that's close to where the Apaches are at, and then over at Nellis is where the Paiutes are at.
Mm-hmm. I think that is that Apache land where Dulce is? I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah, yeah, I've been up on that reservation. Um, Back in, I think it was maybe December 1967, if I remember right. Uh, they took underground. Well, they drilled some boreholes, Department of Energy, and they lowered an atomic weapon down into the hole about 4,000 feet, and they detonated. That was part of Project Gas Buggy, and I learned how to use a Geiger counter back as early as 1967 as a child, monitoring, with the leaks. We did have a little bit of a leak come up, but they never could use the gas because the explosion was too tough and it contaminated the gas. So all those wells now are just sealed up. That's the site, one of the sites I were at where they drilled it and detonated. That's the cap on one of the wells.
So that's where they dug a hole and they put it down inside of there and
Yep,
detonated.
about 42,000. Well, about 4,000 feet, 4,200 feet, I believe.
Wow. Does that
Maybe
have
deeper.
anything to do with these deep underground military bases? I mean, I know I had to put a
Well,
big hole in the ground.
well, actually, that stone right there, when we blew it, it set off a lot of earthquakes, underground earthquakes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was disturbing those extraterrestrials that Phil Schneider and I ran into
Mm-hmm.
years later.
That's right, because so in the encounter that I've read about that happened to y'all, he was actually boring into the ground and he ran into um, like a civilization of graves, right? Is that he kind of drilled into where they were living?
The drill broke into a cavern.
Okay.
It broke into a cavern, and so when it broke into the cavern and released the toxic fumes that was in the cavern, It took about 3 or 4 days for all the toxic fumes to get out. It was just open air, you know. And then we lowered some cameras down there, but the cameras kept getting broken. So we decided to go down and investigate ourselves why the cameras were being broken. And then, like I said, when we got down there, that's when we encountered the tall grays.
Wow. And the Greys weren't too happy about being drilled into, basically. Their
No,
cavern, they were disturbed and they were not supposed to be disturbed.
exactly.
But
Yeah.
did the government, they knew that they were down there or no?
Phil said he thought that they knew. Now 66 special Green Beret soldiers were killed, died in that fight down there with those grays. And see, they've been down there a very, very long time. Probably before, well, it probably goes back before Columbus even got to the Americas, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've been down there maybe about 700 or 800 years from what somebody told me. Now, how they came up with that figure, I don't know. But they've been there about 700, maybe 800 years. And down underneath New Mexico, there's sulfur springs. There's warm rocks down there. If you dig deep enough, it gets hot. It gets like steam down there. And there's all kinds of lava tubes and caverns all throughout New Mexico. Now, I have a friend at Area 51. His name is Charlie. And Charlie is a white male, but he's been spliced with a tall gray. And he's my friend. And Charlie, like I said, you have to look him in the eye to communicate with him. I've been knowing Charlie ever since I was a young kid. But we caught this tall gray, and we had some LSD, and we purposely, hooked this tall gray on LSD.
Wow.
Purposely did it. Because, once we got it hooked on drugs, every 2 hours we have to come back. We have to give it a shot or to go kind of loco. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So every
Dang.
2 hours, this tall gray, you have to give it a LSD shot. Well, we got Charlie to get with this tall gray, and Charlie had on a sensor, we put around his chest, a little, he could carry it, put a strap on his neck, and it would measure the temperature and pressure and everything. And so Charlie got with the tall gray and went down into the cavern. And Charlie got down about 12 miles deep, and it was so much steam and so much pressure, he had to turn back. He couldn't take it. So he gave the tall gray the LSD, and they parted. But Charlie came back, and we measured it. Sure enough, it was 12 miles deep. But Charlie told us something very, very startling. He said it goes as much as 750 miles deep, and it could spread as wide as 800 miles. In other words, there's all kind of underground caverns underneath New Mexico, okay, because of the volcanoes, ancient volcanoes. So we don't know. I can only go by what Charlie told me, how deep the cavern is, the hive. But I don't think that an atomic bomb could wipe them out. I think if you drilled a hole and pumped gas into it, like I said, Project Gas Buggy, we can't use the gas. But if we were to tap the wellhead and pipe it over to the cavern, and then you know, uh, pump it into the cavern, we may can suffocate. It may take a couple of months for all that gas to go 700 or 800 miles, but I believe that we could, suffocate them to death with gas.
So do you think that that Project Gas Buggy was actually to try to get rid of some of those alien hives underground?
No, the purpose of Project Gas Buggy. See, they want atoms for peace. Instead of an atom blowing up a city, they wanted to use atoms for peace. And that was first they thought, well, we can dig a harbor with if we use an atomic bomb. Well, the Sudan blast you know at Nellis Air Force Base. I was there when they did the Sudan test, and in fact, I got contaminated as a child with the fallout. All the dust stirred up, and we couldn't get the jets off the base. None of the jets would. You could cut them on for 17 hours. The EMP, damaged the electronics on jets back then. And I can remember 12 to 14 inches of dust on the runway. They had to sweep all the dust off of the runway of the base. So, we know we can dig a harbor with an atomic bomb, and we know that we can drill and we can shatter and fracture natural gas. But like I said, it contaminated the natural gas. But when they did Project Gas Buggy, they weren't trying to destroy any aliens. They didn't know the aliens were down there. It just shook them up. It's kind of like you wouldn't go up and take a stick and hit a hornet's nest, would you? Because it stirred the hornets up.
I mean, I've done it before when I was younger, and it's dumb. Don't ever do that.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like Project Gas Buggy. It stirred them up. But when we did get down there, you don't want to disturb them. You don't want them. See, the sunlight hurts their eyes, but they come up at night. Okay. They can come up at night. It's just during the day they can't take the sunlight. But we don't know how many are down in the hive. Charlie says the hive is 750 miles deep and 800 miles wide. So, yeah. So,
Jimmy, we have a question in the chat. What aliens were making these hives? Are they mostly gray aliens, or are there reptilians down there? What's down there?
I've seen mostly tall grays is what I've seen now. My understanding is there are some reptilians down there. I'm more familiar with what happened between me and Phil, down when the tall grays attacked him. But I've got other MIBs tell me there's reptilians down there as well. They might just be in a different section of the hive, but they're down there. Go ahead.
I had a friend of mine on the show a while back. Nick Sylvester came on, and it was during the time that the California had a lot of wildfires going on, and he told me that he has some intel that actually some of those fires were set to flush out some of the reptilian hives underground. He said, and I thought that was an interesting theory. Okay, I'm just going to say it was interesting. I'm not going to say I think it was correct, but I'm saying it was interesting because it could be,
Well, these satellites they're shooting in space, they're armed with lasers, and they have to test fire them and calibrate them. So they look for a remote area they can, fire the weapon, and those weapons, like I said, when you get, a lot of dead brush, it burns pretty easy, Right now, up in British Columbia, um, Alberta, excuse me, Alberta. Um, they're shooting a lot of those lasers into the the very remote areas, and they're doing a lot of damage up there. So right now they're in Canada doing it. You just don't hear anything about it because the BBC press suppresses the information.
Oh yeah, the media period does mass media. Well, now we're kind of getting back into like the national parks, like forested lands. I wanted to ask you about some of these national parks tonight too. I think it's Gila National Forest, if I'm not mistaken, is out there near Dulce,
Yeah,
somewhere near there. And there's a high number of missing people who go missing out of these national parks. Now, I've always had my suspicions that these people, and it actually goes with my remote viewing data, that these people that are going missing out of these national parks are being taken to facilities and being experimented on.
yeah, they are.
Does that have a connection to Dulce, do you think?
Yeah, yeah, it does.
Mm-hmm.
You have to remember something. When you're in a national park, they don't have a lot of law enforcement in there because it's vast areas. Um, when people go in, they go into those parks. There's areas that cell phones don't work. Okay, there's areas that cell phones don't work because you're in between the mountains and the valleys and such. And a satellite phone would be good, but then again, you better not run out of power to your battery, you know. But a lot of the national parks, there's underground tunnels, boring companies that's interconnecting the bases and such. And there's a lot of national forests that have underground bunkers in them. Because if we ever have to retreat from the cities, like the military does, they want to be able to get, stash out their weapons and survival supplies, and they're at these national parks. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's where I do. I'm going to say the majority of my cryptid field research is at national and state parks. And does this have anything to do? I mean, I'm asking you because I don't know for sure, Jimmy. I don't know anything. Okay, but could there be a connection to like some of these underground bases, these underground laboratories, and deep underground military bases with the Bigfoots and the dogmen and werewolves?
Yeah. Now the Casper Caverns. Let's go to that for a minute.
Okay.
Only 7% of the Casper Caverns have been explored. So you have 93% that's been unexplored. So you got lava tubes all throughout, that part of the country. Underground caverns and the natural formations of these caverns. And it's like a interstate highway down there. These Bigfoots get in them and they can, travel different distances, and they come up through another opening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's a whole other world down below ground. I mean, it truly is.
It is. Well, it gives them protection from the scorching heat. There's water down there, mushrooms that grows on the rocks, and maybe certain species have adapted to that over millions of years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a perfect environment, like I said, for a reptilian or a tall gray.
Oh yeah. Well, there's a lot of stuff going on underground that us normies. I'm not a normie. I don't think any of us are normies, but our everyday people living our everyday common, I guess kind of common, but not really, lives up here. We're not supposed to know about this stuff. And and the thing that I really love about Phil Schneider and yourself, Jimmy, as well, and I want to give you I want to give you full credit for being so candid about the disclosure that you put out to the public. When Phil Schneider was talking about these underground bases and the Dulce alien war that happened, the alien human war, people didn't believe that. It's really hard to believe this stuff, but these things happen. I mean, if Phil was standing there with his fingers cut off, he showed the scar on his chest, and I think today, let's fast forward 20 something years from that, or over 20 or 30 years, we're having more of the full disclosure now, where the president is actually informing pastors to tell their congregations, hey, we're going to put the real truth out about aliens and UFOs to the general masses. And so I think we've come a long way, Jimmy, but how do you feel about all that? I mean, what do you think about the disclosure that's going on right now with our government?
Well, first of all, when you say our government, you're not talking about my government.
Okay.
You have to remember,
Yes.
I'm of German origin.
Oh.
Okay. I was forced to work for your government as a child. I had no say-so in it. There's times when your government feels uneasy with me. But going back to disclosure, it doesn't bother me if they do it or if they don't do it. It's what I know. And no one has to tell me anything. I've lived it. I've been at this since 1959. And there's another thing. I'm a cloned human. I make that right up known. So I know what it's like to be cloned. And I would advise anyone to be leery of Dulce, New Mexico. There's a lot of things down there in the ground. And if you watch the movie Resident Evil, that's the closest to disclosure you're ever going to get with that underground base. And I was born there.
Wow.
Yeah, I was born there.
I didn't know that.
Well, my body was grown there.
Your clone body.
Yeah. Now, my home is Frenchman Flats, Creech Air Force Base. And then my second home, I would say, is Holloman Air Force Base, because it goes back to the Native American tribes, spiritualness and everything. So I kind of look at the area, I look at it through a different set of eyes than you would. Now, military bases have a high turnover rate, but there are people who live on that base that's been there all their lives, and that's people who are genetically modified, I would say. Your werewolves and such. And so I'm aware of the base. Haven't been out there in years, but if I was to return tomorrow, I don't think it'd be a whole lot different. Maybe, different faces, but it's the same mission. It's just under different management, I like General Creech. I knew Wilbur when he was a lieutenant, and I grew up around, Frenchman Flats, and I've spent a lot of time out at Holloman, training, astronaut chimpanzees,
Really?
Yeah, I trained Mo. Now that was the first astronaut chimp that was sent in space. Yeah, that I would go in there and clean his cage, and the only way I could keep Mo from throwing fecal matter on me, I had a Twinkie.
Oh my God.
I would break a Twinkie off and give him half of it. Well, really give him the whole thing because it stunk so bad in there. But once he, me and him, connect together. So he's not going to cut off his supplier, of Twinkies.
Oh my God.
So yeah, I could control Ham. Now, a 4-star general could walk in there and Ham would take a handful of fecal matter and throw it on a general.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Thank goodness Jimmy was the Twinkie plug.
Yeah, they never knew I was giving him a Twinkie, but he would behave around me. But
Oh my God.
as soon as he saw anybody that had any kind of rank, particularly that general, got all them stars, that's when he really go wild. And he'll throw that fecal matter on it. But they never could figure out how he would behave around me, but he would show off around them. Anybody that had any rank, he'd show out. But I could get him in, the flight simulator, he would, fly. Also, the chimps that did not make it through the astronaut training program, they trained the other chimps, the lesser skilled chimps, to fly. They would irradiate them. They would kill them by irradiating them, like simulating a nuclear blast. And they wanted to know how long a human pilot could fly. So they used the test chimps as flight aviators, put them in a simulator, and then a big rod would come up out of the floor and it would irradiate the chimp. And that was so sad because I go in there and they would, be, couldn't hold their food down and they would, die of radiation poison. But that's part of all, of training chimps and such. But that's how I got my start in secret space program, is training the astronaut chimpanzees.
Wow.
And yeah, and see the capsule for the astronaut chimpanzee is it's like the Apollo, the Gemini capsule, but it's much smaller, about a third smaller. And when I would, get in there, I was like, just a little kid, 8, 9 years old. And they would drop it out of the back of a cargo plane, and I would pull the parachutes, and the capsule would float down to the ground, So I would test the emergency parachutes, on the capsules. So when it came around to the Apollo 20 mission, see, I already had experience, doing astronaut training along with the chimpanzees, because you have to train the chimpanzees, So I already been through astronaut training as a child, but it was basically handling a chimpanzee, trying to show the chimpanzee what to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
I never knew that. We've never talked about that before, Jimmy. Now we have talked about Junior at Montauk, and you gave me some really good advice a long time ago when I first met you, and when you and I were both on James Rink show at Super Soldier Talk, and you said Jessica, don't ever wear perfume when you're out bigfooting or when you go to Montauk or to Camp Hero, right? Didn't you tell me that?
Yeah. Well, think of, you ever had a dog that he liked you so much, but you brought your friend around and your dog didn't like your friend? Well, Junior's kind of like that. I could get around Junior. I'm not worried about Junior. What I'm worried about if Junior don't like my friend, So that was kind of one of the reasons. I mean, I had a couple of reasons, but that was one of the reasons I kind of, hesitated going when I was offered to go. They offered to pay my way, but I got to thinking, well, what happens if we get out there and Junior, unfreezes? Well, how do I explain a Bigfoot coming home with me, tearing up the neighborhood, terrorizing the whole town, But Junior's okay. He's kind of like an old junkyard dog. He likes me, but he may not like my friends, you know. But if you watch the show Forbidden Planet, the old sci-fi movie Forbidden Planet,
Yes.
you'll see them using the mind amplifier, creating a Bigfoot. And when I was on Titan, that's what I would do. I would put the mind amplifier on, and I could create Bigfoot, an electronic Bigfoot. So when you watch the old sci-fi movie, 1956 sci-fi movie, Forbidden Planet, you see an electronic Bigfoot, you know, being using a mind amplifier.
Oh
That's
my gosh.
that's my creation.
Okay, well, some of the people in the audience may not know who Junior is. I'm so sorry, y'all. I didn't specify who Junior is. Now, Junior is actually supposed to be a Sasquatch or Bigfoot that was created through the Montauk Project, right, Jimmy?
Yeah, when I was a young kid, maybe about 8, 9 years old, my intelligence officer brought me out. So you have to train MIB. You have to train them young. You have to train MIB very young so they're not traumatized. So my intelligence officer brought me out to Oklahoma, and there had been a tribe of Bigfoots out there causing a lot of trouble. There was an alpha Bigfoot that was killing people. So he went out there, and I had the pair of binoculars, and I spotted the Bigfoot, and he took his rifle, had a scope on it, and he shot and he killed the Bigfoot that was causing all the trouble. Well, that impressed me, you know, because you're a little kid, you know, you're going on a hunt for the first time, you know, and oh yeah, you got him, you know. So about 2 or 3 days later, we had to head back to Camp Hero. And when I got to Camp Hero, I had never put the mind amplifier band on my head. So they brought me in there one night. It was about 10:30 one night. And they wanted to do this at nighttime because when there's over 250,000 glass tubes, glass tubes on the radios, the amplifiers in there, and it would heat up inside that building real hot. You'd be, if you just had nothing but a t-shirt on, you have sweat going all down your back. So they wanted to do the test at nighttime when it's a little more cooler. So at one night about 10:30, you know, I'm in the control room, and they went ahead and put the metal band on my head and the mind amplifier. But when they did that, one moment later, there's like a 10-foot Bigfoot, a 10-foot tall Bigfoot in the room, and it startled everybody, and they jumped back because there's a monster in the room. And when they jumped back, somebody knocked over one of the computers. It was an old computer that had the reel-to-reel tape, you know. And when they knocked it over, Bigfoot was tearing the place up, throwing chairs around. So everybody ran to the front door, and they ran out. And I ran out with them because they didn't know what to do. I saw them running, so I said, well, I'm going to run with them because I'm just a little kid, you know. So we all ran out the door. Well, the wind caught the metal door and it slammed it shut. And we were all out in the dark, and we could hear Bigfoot behind the metal door. He's tearing the place up. You know, you could hear all the equipment being trashed around, you know. So we couldn't open the door because the keys, Jack Parson had the keys on a keychain on his desk in his office. We couldn't get in. So one of the security guards pulled a rifle on press, said, "You cut this off or I'm going to shoot you." So Preston was under the, you know, the soldier was threatening to shoot Preston if he didn't shut the experiment down. And the only way we could kill the power to the computers, we had to get a torch and there was a catwalk on the side of the a catwalk ladder on the side of the tower. And so Preston climbed up first, and I climbed up behind Preston, and Preston would hold the tank, and then when he climbed a few steps, I would climb up behind him, and I would grab the bottom of the acetylene tank and hold it while Preston went up another rung or two, and then I would lift the tank up. He would re-grab it. We're shuffling this acetylene tank back and forth while we climbed 6 stories high on this ladder. And then we got up to the top room. We got into the room through a side window. And I held the flashlight while Preston cut the coax cable to the antenna. And when he cut the coax cable to the antenna, then the computers couldn't, get the signal from the antenna. And then Bigfoot just, faded out.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm showing the audience a picture of Montauk. This is actually at Camp Hero. That's the Sage Radar Tower right there. I've been there. I've gone Bigfooting there before, y'all. And I wanted to show them how forested it is, how dense of a forest it is around there, where there are multiple Bigfoots that live out there.
Well, my Bigfoot is frozen in time. Now, albelic, you can't see it with your naked eye, but on some cameras, the coat on the camera lens can sometimes pick it up, but it's froze out as outside and is frozen in time. And sometimes if you can look through an old a VCR camera, you can pick it up depending on how the lens is coated. Or if you have a cell camera that's coated, it'll sometimes pick it up. You can't see it with the naked eye, but you can see it through an old camera or old VCR because the lens is coated. You can pick it up that way.
Wow. Yeah, we've been talking about that a good bit on my shows lately, about the technology is able to see things that our naked eye can't. And we got into the light spectrum last week and that discussion and stuff, the light spectrum versus the human eyesight, and how we can only see like 3 to 4% of what's in front of us.
Well, the night goggles I had in Vietnam, they make and pick it up. No, you didn't do that show on the Red Demons
I've actually done a show on that, not with you, but I did a show on the Dicyan dye goggles. It's one of the highest watched shows on my channel.
Well, I've got that. I used those goggles in Vietnam. I tested those. We thought they were defected, and I actually caught an astral being, a demon, with that with those goggles. Now, can you pull it up on Super Soldiers Talk, or either just type in Jimmy Paine, red light demon? I think that was the name of the podcast.
I sure will. Before we do that, I want to take a quick commercial break to thank some more viewers and friends have given some super stickers tonight. So I wanted to thank real quickly Skip Dusty Vinyl Band. Thank you so much for your support. And yes, he's been following the Phil Schneider story for a long time. So thank you so much for being here. And also, Colleen, thank you so much for those 2 super stickers. I appreciate you so much. And that is very sweet of you. Thank you for being here tonight. And okay, let's see. So let's go to Super Soldier Talk. Jimmy, is that what you said? In the red goggles?
Just go to Super Soldiers Talk and just type in Jimmy Paine in the search bar. Because, see, he's got over 400 videos in there. And if you type in the search bar, it pulls all 30 of them up without you having to dig through all 400 and something.
Okay, I'm going to pull up.
You may want to show them how to do it in case somebody wants to do it.
I'm going to share. I needed to pull it up first on my screen, and now I'm going to pull it up for y'all to see. Because I want everybody to please, even though James Rink is no longer here with us, I want y'all to please go and subscribe to his channel. And Jimmy, you have a whole library of interviews that you did with James over here. I was on a couple of those with you, and we talked about Harry and the Hendersons and
Star
all
Trek.
Star Trek. That's right. We haven't even talked about the Enterprise too. We were going to cover that tonight a little bit too before we went.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I
but
knew
yeah,
Spark personally. I commanded the Enterprise for a while.
let me pull up Jimmy Paine right here. Okay, so here's a bunch of the videos that you've made with him. Montauk radar time travel experiments, secret Apollo 17 to 20 missions. The USS Eldridge Philadelphia experiment is right here. And let me make it bigger so y'all can see it. Yeah, time travel. The Vietnam War red light demons right here. This is it.
That's it. If you really want to know about, like I said, about the gargles, you go there. That'll give the history of the gargles that everybody has heard about. Now, I think there was a movie on Netflix or one of them. I think it was, what was it, 13 Ghosts or something?
Yes.
Where some people lived in a glass house and they had ghosts in it, and you could see the ghost,
Mm-hmm.
And it shows them going through a junkyard, squirting blood out of a tanker, when they're capturing these astral beings. Yeah, that's the Enterprise I was on.
We did the Mel's Hole show together too. That was one of my remote viewing targets. That's I love Mel's Hole.
That was a good one too.
It was.
A lot of people get turned around on Mel Waters' Hoe. I knew Mel Waters personally.
Did you?
I knew him personally, yeah. That would be a very interesting one. A lot of times when people have, just a little time on their hand, they don't want to watch the same rerun on TV. You can just go there and click in. I've got over 30 podcasts in there, and I think I got a little bit of everybody. Whatever you're interested in paranormally, I cover it.
Mm-hmm.
I cover it. I'll tell you another good one is E.T. Phone Home. That was a good one. I'm surprised that we didn't have more viewers on E.T. Phone Home. That was a really packed with all sorts of side information. The Travis Walton experience ties into E.T. Phone Home. That's a very good podcast there. The Georgia Guidestones. I know I was there when they dedicated Georgia Guidestones.
Were you, Jimmy? Who built the Guidestones?
Actually, it was the German scientists. When they started to get older, their religion was shattered. That's their version of spiritualism. Rooster Christian,
The Rosicrucians. Well, the rumor is, because I'm from Georgia. I live here, and the rumor was always that Ted Turner, who just passed away this week, he owned the Atlanta Braves, I think, for a while, but he owns Turner Broadcasting, Cartoon Network, TBS, all that. The rumor was that he's the one that put those up, but I didn't really ever believe that.
No, he didn't put them up. I knew the people who put them. It was a German scientist that pooled their money, and they also buried a time capsule. I went out during the night and I buried the time capsule, and then next morning they pushed the rest of the dirt into the hole. I just dug down a little deeper, and I buried a stainless steel time capsule there in secret. But there is a time capsule buried there.
Oh wait.
Yeah.
I wonder if they got that out after they knocked it over. Surely they got it out of there.
Well, I don't know. It's not supposed to be open until there's a nuclear bomb goes off, and there will be a nuclear bomb, and there will be a lot of people, dying, and they'll be looking for guidance then.
Oh no. Well, now the stones are gone. Now what are we going to do now, Jimmy? If the stones are gone. Do they have another? Do they have another guide stone
No,
location?
no, no.
No.
I
Oh,
tell you, I tell you another good one was Jeeper Creepers there right above the Star Trek. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
no, I did a 1 and 2. Now, I don't think James ever uploaded number 2, but number two's on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just
I think
type
I
in
saw it.
Super Soldier Jimmy Paine on YouTube, I think you pull up
There it is.
Jeeper Creepers 2. Yeah.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. This is all on YouTube right here, Jimmy.
Well, everything James got them all loaded up, but Jeeper Creepers number 2. He never uploaded it, but it's on YouTube. You can go there, pull them up. You can go to Rumble, pull them up. You can pull a great many up on BitChute. It all goes back. You have to type in Super Soldier Jimmy Paine. If you just type in Jimmy Paine, there's other people named Jimmy Paine up there. But Super Soldier Jimmy Paine pulls everything up. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is a wonderful library full of information here, and it was such a blessing to be able to work with James Rink as well. And I know that he really had a lot of respect for you, Jimmy, as do I. And
Well, he didn't. I mean, I never would have thought that he would have passed, but it happens, Um, but I'm old school Montauk. I was there when the ship teleported. Um, when it we put it up on the computer screen,
mhm.
back in '83 is when we try to make a second attempt to get on it in '83.
And you're talking about the USS Eldridge?
Yeah. See, every 20 years it'll appear. Like it started in 43. It appeared in 63. In 63 is when I encountered it. And then in 83 I encountered it. And in just this last go around 2023 I was supposed to go to Camp Hero, but I never did. James, instead of having the people I wanted there, James just got a lot of people who was in Healing Soul Survivors, and these people just crashed it.
Oh
And
my gosh, Jimmy, I was there, so I guess I
well,
can say.
no, you were there for scientifically. These other
Mhm.
people had no connection to it. Um,
I was asked to be there to do some remote viewing, actually. So
yeah,
yeah.
but the other people that were there, I'm sure they have been traumatized, but they weren't traumatized there.
Mhm.
There may be there may be a girl or two that has been traumatized down at Fort Tilden. They did use females from Fort Tilden, but that's on the other side of Long Island. But I know who the Montauk boys are, and the vast majority of people that were there had nothing to do, were not part of the experiment. There might have been maybe just a few people, one or two females. I said maybe one or two from Fort Tilden that wandered in. See, Fort Tilden has the same blueprints that Camp Hero has. The buildings may be turned around a little different, but it's the same buildings and the same underground bunkers. And but the females didn't come along to much later in the experiments because they had to get the radiation down. When I was there, they used to give us a brown paper bag and they'd say, put it in your back pocket. And if you feel like you're going to vomit in this bag and then twist the top and put it in the garbage can. Because that radiation, the microwave radiation, make you throw up.
Oh yeah.
See? And it was until very late in the program that they got the microwave down and they got it much safer where you could, bring the females in. But it was very late in the program when we brought them in. So the vast majority of the women that showed up, I'm sure they have been traumatized, but they weren't traumatized at Camp Hero. There may have been a few from Fort Tilden, but that's the other side of Long Island. And I would have to sit down with them, interview them to figure out which one is the real Montauk girl or the Fort Tilden girl. James didn't know what he was doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, James was a pioneer in the disclosure, online disclosure for sure.
He was
of these secret space programs, and it was that's a big deal. That's a big deal.
He was a kind-hearted guy. Anybody could talk to him, and a lot of these females had problems, and they'll call him up, and he would listen to them, and I think most were telling the truth, but you have to remember a lot of them's got brain fog, and
we all have brain fog, everybody.
Yeah, but you have to get with somebody who's been in the program for many years, and James never was in the program. James did not really understand it till I started talking to him. He had a little bit of a grasp to it, but it took James about 30 or so interviews before he started to grasp things. And then we never did get through. I still have about another 50 podcasts, 55 more podcasts to cover, another 50 or so movies before we could fully get him trained.
Well, I hope that we have some more podcasts for you and I to do, because I'm glad to carry on the tradition over here, because I absolutely love the disclosure that you're putting out, Jimmy, and I really appreciate you coming on my show and joining me.
I enjoy you, and I tell you, you got another 50 podcast, 50 or so more, so you're just now getting warmed up.
I am. I think we're doing a good job so far. I'm having fun with this.
I think you are. It's a learning curve, Jessica. And I try to tell everybody, when I was doing one of the most disheartening things that's happened to me, when I was first started getting to know James, I didn't know anything about healing soul survivors, but I would get on there and I'd say one little thing, and I had people that would just cuss me out, write horrible things on the internet. And when I started to realize, these people are been fractured, they've been shattered, and they were looking to James for some type of information. And then James was looking at me, trying to get the information. I was trying to tell James, but I was running into a lot of disinformation. It's just like an echo chamber. And I'd heard these old rumors for years and years, so I know what's true and what's not. And when I try to go in and say, James, put that aside, and that upset a lot of people. And just like the other day when me and you did Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I had a few people that got upset. But I had, like I said, it's hard for me to hear. I'm deaf in one ear. And if I can't see your lips, I don't know when you're talking. You don't know when I'm talking because I got a black screen on. And
Jimmy, I know it was the map thing, I bet, because we were having a rough time with the maps. Remember that?
Yeah, but just like before we got on tonight, we had audio trouble, and I'm on my backup computer now because my computer in the front living room was acting up. So you were getting ready to cancel everything, and I didn't want to do that to you because I know you wanted to. You like talking and trying to, yeah.
I don't cancel it, Jimmy. I had a countdown for StreamYard, so I had to get the show on the road.
I didn't know we had a countdown.
I'm like a dance mom. I'm like, let's get the show on the road.
Well, I think in the future we'll have to before we go on, we may need to get on like another 20 minutes early,
Yes.
And
next time I'm gonna crack that whip.
Well, I knew I was going to have a 7 o'clock interview, but I was looking at something else on the internet, and before I realized, oh goodness, it's Jessica. The phone's ringing. Oh Lord! So
Listen, I'm on it, doggone it. We made it happen. This has been a great show tonight, actually. I very much enjoyed it. And I think we did great, Jimmy. You've done a wonderful job
well,
tonight.
all of our shows are not 1 hour shows. These shows run close to three. Has it been averaging around about 3 hours?
About 3 hours. They can go long, yeah.
But see, the reason it takes much longer, when you start telling them something, they want to know, well, where are you coming from? What was you doing? And how do you know it? So I start off real slow, telling them what was going on during that timeline, because a lot of this is before people were born. And I try to explain is in detail the little things, because when people go back and say, well, how does he know it? Was he there? Yeah, because I've already explained it. And just like tonight, me and you spoke. You know, I'm getting up in age, so I don't have the X file in front of me, so I'm just going by memory, and like I said, it takes me a little while to orientate myself, and I have to talk through it to explain it, because if you weren't born in that timeline, it's hard for you to comprehend. Well, what was it like? How were people? Just like the cattle mutilations. How do you know it? What was you doing when you found out? And where was you at when you found out? And I put all that in, because see, I'm not echoing anything. I'm telling the oral history of the timeline, what was going on, just like I did tonight. Anybody can get up on the internet and tell you this or that, and they can be through in 30 minutes flat. But I take, 3 hours, because I'm going slow. Yeah, I'm telling the oral history. And you can, like I said, you can go down to archives and look it all up. You'll be down to archives a very long time, and you'll spend a lot of money. It's best to find somebody who is familiar with that that mission or that project, and ask them, say, well, what was it like in your timeline, and what was Preston like, or how Bigler was like, or Phil Schneider was like, or Jack Parnell was like, the station manager of Camp Hero. And so I go off and I spend a good little detail. And I'm going to say another thing. If you think you've been to Camp Hero or you've been in time travel, I'll listen to you. But I'm not, like I said, there's a lot of people who have brain fog. And if you've been there, I'm going to know it. It may take me a little while listening to you, but I'll know if you're a Montauk girl or you're a Montauk boy. Now, there are some Montauk boys that came after me during James Rink's time, and I know one for a fact, and I know there's more of them, but it goes back, like I said, James is no longer here, and so if you have somebody that contacts you, Jessica, and they say, well, I'm a Montauk boy or I'm a Montauk girl, you just get a hold of me, and I'll talk to them privately, not on the air, but privately. And I'll figure it out. If I can't figure it out, I'll find somebody who can, figure it out for me,
Mm-hmm.
Go
Oh yeah.
ahead.
Well, I will keep you posted if anybody contacts me, Jimmy. And I am terrible about checking my messages because I get so many of them. I'm like drowning in emails all the time. So But I will definitely keep an eye out if anybody, contacts me and on behalf of getting in touch with you.
Now I'm reading a message. I'm reading a message on the screen. It says, Jimmy, how many years were you and MIB? How many years have you been retired? Well, I first got exposed to the MIBs when I was 3 years old. I was raised by them. You have to raise a MIB very young. And when Phil Schneider's death in 1995, I took a step back. Well, not took a step back, I took a step aside and to reevaluate the situation. And so since 1995, I've gone undercover, or I should say off the map. Haven't been to the base since 1995, Creech Air Force Base or Holloman. I don't know if you can ever. I think once you're an MIB, you're MIB for life. You can't never, because of the Chinese and the Russians and the Israelis. If this country was ever invaded, they just don't want the current intelligence employees. They want the ones who have the experience. And so they would go after me. There was a bad security breach back in the early 70s. If you had anything to do with a 3-letter agency, FBI, CIA, DOD, Secret Service, Naval Intelligence, Army Intelligence, Air Force Intelligence, Coast Guard, of all the 17 agencies, all of their personal information was hacked. And only about a dozen or so, I think around about 14, maybe 15 MIBs who were behind they were in industrial park. We were not hacked. And I ended up doing intelligence work for the government for about 7 years. I had to go down to when George Bush was over CIA, and I ran all of North America and parts of Europe until they could retrain all the CIA agents, field agents. So I had about 7 years of a long, hard run running intelligence. They get CIA back up. Go ahead.
Wow. I mean, we have a ton of questions tonight. I did put stars by them. I don't think we're going to get into all these questions tonight, y'all. I'm so sorry.
Well, I'm reading.
There's one on the screen. This is Sovereign Cosmic Wildman. Thank you for being here, Sovereign. He says, did Jimmy know of any time travel experiments out here in the West, on the West Coast?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You want to talk about it?
Well, there's jump rooms out there on the West Coast.
Yes.
That's nothing new to me.
We've covered those, Jimmy, out in Los Angeles, I think, or Santa Monica or somewhere. I heard there's jump rooms to Mars and to Venus.
Well, you don't need a gigantic radar, Jessica. You can do it with computers. You don't need all that heavy stuff you did years ago. Look, you can use Socorro, New Mexico. I've gone out there and taken a laptop computer and plug it into the radar, and boom, I got the same thing there as I had at Camp Hero with a little laptop computer.
Jimmy, what kind of cars do MIBs drive? Is there anything in particular? Are they like Crown Victorias or something?
Well, the government's always going to have black wall tires. They're not going to be nothing fancy. If you look and see what the Secret Service drives around the president, we drive just, we drive cars, government cars. There's nothing fancy.
Fancy.
Yeah.
How big? Those are like from the 2000s, probably like early 2000s. Sorry.
Well, whatever the government proves is what we drive.
All Ford Explorers. That's what they drive, y'all.
Well, we don't want to get too technical about giving them a
Right.
hands up, but
I'm kidding. We have another question from Mitch. Jimmy, are there hierarchies in the MIB, in the Men in
no,
Black? Is there like a hierarchy? No.
no, no. It's rank base. It's very militaristic.
Mm.
Can you read that for me? I don't have my
Yes.
glasses on.
It says, "What about Patrick Air Force Base in the 1960s?" Are you familiar with that?
Well, I wasn't stationed at Patrick. I was stationed at. I've been at several bases. I've been Camp Hero. I've been at Creech Air Force Base, Nellis Air Force Base, Bell Air Force Base. Been at e- Vandenberg Air Force Base. I've been there. I've been at Edwards Air
Uh-oh.
Force Base. I've been a lot of different bases. I've been kicked out a couple of bases too. I don't want to say about, but a lot of people thought I was CIA and I got kicked out. But I'm not CIA. I'm MIB.
Get
So
the get the acronym right, people. I'm just
yeah,
kidding.
see, MIB can't spy on you. But
Oh, that's right.
when CIA went down, they had to get me to go in there and run it till they could get everybody else trained. But I'm MIB. But I get a lot of people. A lot of people say, "Well, you're CIA." Well, yeah, I know about CIA. I had to go down there for a while till they could retrain everybody. But in my heart, I'm MIB.
Once at MIB, always at MIB.
You can never. I tried to readjust to be a civilian, but because the Chinese and Russians and Israelis, I don't think I could ever come out of the code. I just because of Phil Schneider's murder, I I didn't I didn't plan on being this for life, but that's what I am.
Mm.
I'm not I'm not I'm proud of who I am, but I have no country. I'm German. I've trained by German intelligence.
Uh, Jimmy, if let's just say that if I were looking for a job and I wanted to be at MIB, could I just go sign up somewhere to be an MIB or no?
Well, I never signed up. Um, I think the extraterrestrial that found me as a child knew who I was related to, and it just simply did a time jump to find the descendants of who I'm related to. And um, the military knew I could channel spirits. And so when the scientists started to grow old, you had to have technicians to assist the scientist. And so I was trained as a technician real early in life. And when they brought the scientists over, most of them most of them did were reintegrated into society, but some were not. Some never could leave the base. And when I got to the base, I worked with the ones who could not be reintegrated. And a lot of them were, their gums were bleeding from uh, exposure to radiation and chemicals and such.
Oh my.
Yeah, and had sores on their skins. They were very proud of their country. They still wore their German uniforms, but they never could leave uh, uh, Nellis Air Force Base. Um, they never could leave. They never could be reintegrated. So, but they would threaten me all the time. If, particularly when I was doing time jumps at Camp Hero, I would go in there late at night and do a time jump, go back to Germany, and I had found me a Russian sniper rifle, and I would go back and I would, I was a sniper, and I would shoot the Russian officers. And when they found out that what I was doing in the jump, using the time machine after hours, well, they were going to lock me up with Rudolph Hess, and they threatened me, but I don't like Russians. I'm going to say right off. I don't like Russians. So, yeah, that's why your government feels uneasy with me at times.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Well, I like your I like how you say it like you mean it. Okay, and
I
you
do.
don't hold anything back, and I appreciate that.
I do mean it when I say I don't like
You
them.
do. You do.
Yeah.
I love your candidness, Jimmy.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
like I said, I grew up with the Hitler SS youths, Um, I've met Hitler before. I've met a lot of famous people doing time jumps. I've time jumped. I've gone back to Rome when the gladiators were fighting in the arena.
Oh my
And
gosh, I want to
yeah,
do that. I want to do that. That's what I want to
well,
do.
it's real fun, when you're a kid. The gladiator. I got to hold his sword, and he, I got to meet a gladiator, you know. But like I said, I've time jumped. I've been to the American Civil War. I've been in World War II. I've time jumped and gone into the future. And some of the things that I've seen is just heartbreaking. Uh, the
In the
things
future,
that your government is withholding from you. And see, you don't have no more free elections. All your elections, they already know who's going to be the president. It's by no mistake, you know. But I can talk freely tonight because I can just pick up another alias anytime I want, you know. But I'm not mad at anybody. I'm just saying that's just me. And a lot of people they cut TV on and they watch MIBs, Will Smith and all that. It's just not like that. It's very different, It's
is
very different.
is the multiverse real, Jimmy?
Explain a little more in detail.
Mitch wants to know if the multiverse is real. I mean, they show us that in movies today, like almost like there's all these parallel realities all happening at once, and
Yeah,
different versions of ourselves in different realities.
well, there's because of the gravity affects the clocks.
Mhm.
See, gravity affects clocks. All right, the further that you time jump, the more distorted that the clocks are. And that's where you get into these parallels at. Now, one of the things that concerns me is we had a kid at Montauk. He did a time jump, and when you do your time jump, you come back, you have to be debriefed. But one day they gave me the chart. They said, "Look, you need to take the chart, and we have a set of questions here you need to ask this other time jumper." And so they gave me a long list of questions to ask him, and I have to write off on each question. But when I was talking to this this Montauk boy that did a time jump, but I had a desk in the room, and he had a chair in front of my desk where I had my notepad down when I was talking to him. But there was a window in the room, and the sun was coming up, and it was, you know, when the sun is rising, it casts the shadow in a well, the sunlight travels with the sun in the room. Okay, when the sunlight when the sun gets up so high, you can see the light being in the floor of the room, shine into the room. But what happened was, I know this Montauk boy started looking at the floor. He was looking at the sun traveling on the floor through the window, and he was looking at my notepad, and he started to cry and holler, and he started having what I would PTSD fit. But what had happened was everything was backwards, like all the writing was backwards. And what the reason why he was hollering, he said, well, the sun is coming up in the east. See, what had happened here was that when he did the time jump, the sun comes up in the east and sets in the west. Well, something went wrong in the time jump. Where he comes from, the sun comes up in the west and settles in the east. And the only way that he could read my writing that was on the notepad, we had to take a mirror. We had to take a mirror. He could read it. Now, what had happened here was this was a parallel universe.
Oh, a parallel universe. Part of the multiverse.
Where our sun comes up in the east and goes down in the west. Wow. And we can read our writing. When he came back, the sun comes up in the west and goes down in the east. And the only way that he can read our writing is look at it through a mirror. Now, let me tell you what happened to me. And this is concerning. When I took my time jump, when I came back, the sun is different what it is today.
Really?
You're used to the sun coming up in the east and going down in the west. Well, the sun that comes up from my timeline comes up at about 20 degrees. It's about 20 degrees off. So something went wrong in the time machine with me. And so I'm running in a parallel universe. I'm back, but it's like the sun is 20 degrees off. It does come up in the east and goes down in the west, but it's coming up at 20 degrees further east than what it normally should be for me. And it's going down 20 degrees further west than it should be. So I'm kind of from a parallel. I left this dimension. I left when the sun comes up in the east and goes down in the west. But when I came back, now the sun comes up in 20 degrees off from the east and goes down 20 degrees off in the west. So it's affected me. But now I'm not as bad off as he is. I can read the writing. He could not read the writing. You have to take a mirror to look at it. So there is such things as parallel universes. And
Mm-hmm.
when people time jump and they come back and they say, well, such and such year we're going to have a war, or such and such years there's going to be a flood or an earthquake, and then when it happens, when it comes time and it doesn't happen, they don't know why. And there's two things here that's going on. One, the further that you jump out, the more the clocks are affected by the gravity. And the second thing that's affected is you know, like I said, it's the north, south, east, west bit. It's off just a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Jimmy,
See,
I've actually woken up many, and this may not have anything to do with this, but I've always had my suspicions that when I wake up in the morning, sometimes the moon and the sun are not in the right position where they should be, because I pay attention. Okay, I pay attention, and I've had people tell me that I was crazy, and that that the sun, moon, they go down different places every day. Well, no, they don't.
no, it's happened to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably one of the most rarest things that can happen to a person, but it has happened to me. I just keep quiet about it because it upsets a lot of people when I start talking about it, that we have a parallel universe, that the sun does come up in the west and goes down in the east, and then when I say it comes up on the east 20 degrees difference and goes down in the west 20 degrees difference, it upsets people. It's rare. It's kind of rare that I even talk about that, but I will talk about it tonight. I have another question from it. It says, Jimmy, I've heard, I can't quite read it because
I'll read it. It says, I've heard there'll be a time a planet will be visible in the sky, probably Nibiru, planet Nibiru. Curious if you've heard anything like that coming.
Yeah, it has a 36,000 year rotation. It'll cycle back every 3,600 years. And what it'll do, just like the moon can affect the tide, when this planet comes back around, it's not going to be the end of the world. It's done it many times before. But what would happen is, say you're on the Florida coast, you're on the East Florida coast, and or let's say you're on the southern tip of Florida. When the planet comes back around, it's going to pull the ocean, it's going to pull the tides back, and you'll be able to walk from Florida to Cuba. There'll be puddles of water, but you'll be able to walk from Florida to Cuba because it's going to pull the tide back.
Ooh, interesting.
But it's going to be real slow and real gradual. And for about 700 or 800 years, the tide will stay back, and then as the planet passes on, about 7 or 8 years later, then the tide would come back in and be back normal. It's not going to be no massive earthquakes, not going to be no volcanoes blowing. It's real gradual.
It's going to be subtle changes, kind of.
Well,
if you call that subtle.
Some islands on the other side of the world will be underwater, and then as this ninth planet passes, this other planet passes, this phantom planet, the tide will go back normal. I guess you call it a ninth planet. Now Pluto's not a planet. They don't call Pluto a planet.
It's not a planet. When I grew up, when I was in school, it was a planet.
Well, I think we need to give Pluto his name back. So I think we need to get some T-shirts. Yeah. Let's give Pluto his name back.
Okay, Pluto's a planet again, everybody. I didn't even know it wasn't a planet anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Everything changes. We live in a weird, crazy world, man. We really do, Jimmy. I
Well,
love
if you go out on the uh, the coast of Cuba, there's pyramids, uh, down in the ocean there. They've already found the pyramids. And if you go off the coast of Spain, there's about 15 different cities scattered throughout Spain and on the coast there. They're underwater, underwater cities. So when people start talking about climate change and they rabble on about it, well, let me tell you something about climate change. All the planets are heating up, not just Earth, Mars, uh, Saturn, Venus, all these planets are warming up in temperatures. So it's just not an Earth thing. It's like I said, it's the ninth planet. Coming back around. It's very awesome. It's very big, and it affects the solar weather. You know,
Mhm.
this is solar warming from outer space. Go ahead.
Okay. How about this? Let's do one last question because I know my kid. We've been having tests all week and stuff, so I'm gonna have to go make sure my son's asleep, y'all. Jimmy, after we answer this question about resurrecting giants, we're going to bring you back for the next show. Hopefully, we'll do this in another month. Okay, we're on a roll, y'all, with Jimmy. But Jimmy, what do you think? Are they resurrecting the giants right now?
Well, there's certainly a lot of genetic experimentation going on underground at Dulce, New Mexico. Now,
Ooh,
I have,
circle back, circle back
I
to
have,
Dulce.
I have seen very large humans, and they are cannibalistic. So there's an old saying about giants being cannibalistic. That's very true. Now, most of the skeletons have been collected, and they've disappeared. I believe they're getting DNA material out of the bones, the use for trying to resurrection, bring them back. It's just, they want a super soldier, and so they want to get a giant. But now, if you watch the movie, um, Alien, or I was the one that found the alien in the chair that had the xenomorph that popped out of his chest. That was a giant human, you know. So we're descendants. We're just genetic. We got a little bit of DNA from everywhere here.
Oh yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah. Well, this has been a giant of a show tonight, Jimmy. And I don't know, Jimmy, did you hear about this? There is a gentleman who is an official with FEMA who claims to have teleported into a Georgia Waffle House. Did you hear about that?
No, but some of the crazy stories do have a little bit of truth to them. I think he's experienced something he doesn't understand.
Right.
Um, yeah, there may be some truth to it. I've teleported different places. I mean,
Why not? That you know what? If I'm teleported somewhere, I'd want to teleport in a Waffle House too. Get some
well,
scattered, covered, smothered, top dice chunked hash browns and a waffle. And
I
some coffee.
think there's a I think there's an MIB who likes hanging out at Waffle House. That's his favorite place. So, like I said, Waffle Houses, you can have some strange company in there.
You sure can. We used to go to Waffle House after a Wednesday night meetup, and Al Bielek actually came to some of those meetups, by the way, Jimmy. He used to come to Atlanta and hang out with Mr. Sam. Okay. That's how I met my Bigfoot research group, by the way, was going to these meetings with all them.
I've
So,
only been, I don't go to any UFO groups, but I went to one Bigfoot meeting, and that was when Phil Schneider was in that group. and I got to talking with some of those guys. They're okay. I mean, I'm familiar with the Portland Bigfoot group. Well, of course, I don't know if any of them's still alive now, but I can say I have gone to a Portland Bigfoot meetup. In fact, that's where we picked up information on Harry. We had that we did our show on a while back. Harry and the
Yeah.
Hendersons. Yeah,
Right.
we need to do another podcast on that. But James is I'm not sure what was going on with James's computer. It was off a good bit, the audio, but I think people had a very good time listening to that video, and it tells a lot what a Bigfoot is like, and what the female Bigfoot is like. Um,
Oh yeah. Wait, you know
yeah.
what? That show got shut down because there were some copyright issues. I think that's what happened
Well,
with
well,
that one.
James, I kept telling James, you're playing too much of it, but he was just, real high up on it. He
He
was
was
just
having fun.
he was having fun, and he
We
didn't
we were
care.
we were
Yeah.
all having fun, Jimmy. That was a great show. So
Well,
we did.
we'll have to do a remake of it, and with some good audio the next go around. But like I said, we have about 50 more X Files, 50 or 55 more X Files we can go into. So that's kind of on the back burner. I would love, I don't know what you want to do, but I would like to do the Amityville Horror next. Uh,
That's a
and
scary one. But it
well,
has something to do. Well, it actually has something to do for the audience. It has something to do with a creature out of the lake behind that house, right? The ocean.
yeah. Now, what's good about that one, if we decide to do it, we keep hearing about Montauk girls. Why? Well, Dawn DeFay was a Montauk girl, and uh, she was Ronald's sister.
Mhm.
See, Ronald was the one that took the 32 rifle and shot some of the family members, but she supposedly shot some herself. She
Oh,
shot she shot she shot the small children,
oh
and then
gosh.
and then he shot the parents. But I don't want to go into that because if we decide to do it, that's a lot of information coming out. So all these young females just running around saying, "Well, I've time jump." Well, you have to do a real good profile of a Montauk girl, and Dawn DeFrey was a Montauk girl, and I knew Dawn, and I knew Ronald, and so that would be a good one to do. It tells a lot about Italian Americans, how they tie into Camp Hero. It ties into the females, the time traveling females, and it ties into well, I work for John Gotti. My godfather sent me to work with John Gotti from Vegas.
Uh
I
oh.
was Yeah, I
You
got
better
in
not
trouble.
tell too much, then, Jimmy. It's quittance for you. It's be quittance.
Well, I me and my
Kidding.
sidekick, I got a job in a horse stall,
What?
and my one of my godfathers, of course, it was 12 godfathers in the family.
Gosh.
He had this horse. He had this racing horse. So I got a job in shoveling horse shit in a stall. Well, anyway, one night
Oh man.
He goes to bed. So I crawled up the side of the lattice board on the side of the house, and got into the bedroom. And I took the old horse head and put it in under the bed by his foot. And he
Jimmy.
woke up. He woke up next morning covered in blood
Oh
and
Lord.
hollering and screaming. That was his racing horse. But
Oh,
yeah,
Jimmy.
I got in trouble, so I had to go back to New
That's
York.
great.
and stay out of trouble. And then that's when I soldiered with John Gotti, his family, and I worked for John Gotti for a while. But there's a connection between Camp Hero and John Gotti, and I love to do that. And we may even get a little bit into London Pontono, and her abduction from the Brooklyn Bridge and everything. I knew Linda Montano. I knew Bob Hopkins and all that, But I love to do Amityville, the true story, because the vast majority of the stuff going on about Amityville, you can just take every one of those films and throw them in the trash can. I can tell you the true story of what really happened at a house, and it's unbelievable. And I want to do Amityville first. I was supposed to do Amityville with James and Misha Johnson, but Misha got sick, and then James never got around to it. And then I want to do Soldier with Kurt Russell in it. That's a good one that would tell what a Montauk boy is really like in the future. I want to cover those two because we keep getting a lot of questions on time traveling, and no one's left alive now to tell it. Well, you have one or two people left, but they're not talking. But I think I could do those two shows, and it would throw a lot of light on Camp Hero. Because if something happens to me, then there's no oral history recorded. So those two shows are kind of sensitive. We really need to do those two. But it's up to you how you feel. If you feel there's something else you need to do, we'll go your direction. But it's up to you.
Oh yeah, I think Amityville will be great because it does cover so many facets of so many things. So I think that 100%. Let's plan on it, Jimmy. How about in another month we'll meet up? Okay.
We'll meet up in another month.
Okay.
Maybe I can get Misha Johnson back. If we can't, well, then we'll do it without her. She's got a lot of people in her group they go there for support. Traumatized, mostly monarchs. Most females go through monarch, and she's got a lot of there may be a couple of presidential models, but there are not that many of them left I know of.
Okay. Oh yeah, I love Misha. She is a wealth of information, and and so are you, Jimmy. So are you.
I appreciate it, but like I said, Preston did a lot of the interviews, and so did Al Bielek, but a lot of those interviews are starting to be taken down. I guess maybe they're going to put them in the Internet Archives, But there are still people walking around that have some questions they need answered, and they get a lot of hype when they listen to the new Montauk boys. You have to go back to the early Montauk boys, the ones pre-Vietnam, to really get an understanding of it. The ones that came in the 90s were, after Preston reopened it, they just don't have any military training, so I don't know. I think there's one or two that I'm aware of, but I haven't been able to talk to them yet. So
okay. Well, we're gonna get everything worked out. We're gonna put a great show together for the next time you come on, Jimmy. And so all in all, I guess let's just summarize it tonight. We covered the secrets of Dulce Base tonight. We went down so many different detours. It was a wonderful show tonight. And Jimmy, thank you again so much for being here tonight and for sharing all this with us tonight. I know the audience loved it. This has been one of my favorite shows I've done with you so far.
Well, I enjoyed it too, Jessica. Like I said, it's a little bit difficult talking about Dulce because people just don't really understand what went on. I understand what goes on. I was there, as I said, when Phil was injured, shot, and I was also cloned there. So that is where I was created, and there's a lot more people who are clones walking around. Uh, Anytime you see anybody, they start to talk about reincarnation, that's a red flag. That's the clone remembering the past life, you see.
Oh yeah.
And yeah,
Uh-oh.
and there's a lot of
Uh-oh.
people who are being cloned that don't know it.
Dang. Dang. I know a lot of people that have had some past life memories and stuff, Jimmy.
Well,
Dang
there
it.
may be some that it might just be mental, but
Yeah.
there's a bleed over. There's a bleed over on a lot of that. And
Interesting.
yeah, and I've actually, like I said, I've actually seen other people I've known, their bodies being grown in pods that I've walked up on, and but they can grow a body in 4 months. I'm told now they can grow it less than 4 months. Yeah.
Wow. Well, this has been freaking tastic. And you know what? I wanted to take a moment to remember Phil Schneider tonight too before we go. Of course, James Rink. We always remember James. But Phil Schneider, that was a true patriot right there, and a real groundbreaker when it came to the disclosure of the deep underground military bases and the Dulce human war down there. And so yeah, so thank you to Phil Schneider, man. Thank you, Phil Schneider, and thank you, Jimmy, for sharing the story with us tonight.
Thank you. If anybody hears anything about Phil's wife, Cynthia, um, let her know that I like to talk with her. I wish her well. I'm very sad that Phil died the way he did, but he was my friend, and I have every intention of seeking, um, you know, to right what was done to him, to right the wrong that was done to him. He was a good man, and he was my friend. I miss him very much.
Well, you know what? I think the best thing that we can do is to talk about what he was talking about to carry on the tradition, and to keep disclosure going with all of them.
Well, one out of every $4 goes to underground base. You know,
Oh yeah.
they can't account for the money. The Pentagon can't account for it, billions of dollars, but one out of every $4 goes to these bases. And when these XETs are through with us, once they get all that underground, all the area developed, they have no more use for the surface dwellers. So the clock is running on us. They have life forms down there that can come up to the surface. But when they do come up, they're going to be coming up by the millions. And they're going to be and they're going to have one thing on their mind, and that's fresh meat. And we are the meat that they need.
Well, luckily I taste bad. Hopefully they don't like the way I taste. So leave
Better
me
eat a lot
alone.
of garlic.
A lot of
Better eat a
garlic.
lot of garlic.
Keep the
Yeah.
vampires and the aliens away. Yeah.
Yeah.
Clove garlic a day keeps the aliens away. Oh man. Well, okay. Well, Jimmy, thank you again so much for being here. I hope that you will come back and see me in 1 month. We're going to plan on Amityville Horror. That will probably be the next one, y'all. And yeah. I guess, do you have any final thoughts, Jimmy? We're going to shut this down because I got to make sure my kid's in bed.
Well, I just want to say thank y'all for all the people who showed up tonight. And if I did not answer your question on the that you put up, it's not that I was trying to ignore you or anything. It's just that we have so much going on. We can't get to it all. and I'm back here. I didn't have my glasses on. It's hard for me to read what's on the screen, you know. But if you don't, just keep asking your questions in the future, and I'll double back and try to answer them.
Oh yeah. Jerry Lane says, I taste like Vieners. Jerry, stop it. Okay. And how do you say Vienna sausage, Jimmy?
We call them Viennas.
Vien-
Viennas here.
Viennas, right?
We
So,
say it's Viennas too. You know,
yeah.
it's. See, you got to remember, I'm not that far from Cajun country.
I know. You're in the South too. If y'all can't tell, Jimmy and I are both from the South. Okay. And different parts of the South. We're both from the South.
I can get on. I live by the Mississippi River, and I can go south and be in Louisiana in just a few minutes, you know, and that's all swamp land down there. So I'm real close to the Cajuns, you know. I live in a very unique spot in the country. And like I said, when all the interstates get knocked down, then I can just get in the river and, you know, go up and down the river banks, you know. I ain't got to worry about the highways being the bridges down. That's one of the good things about this area here.
Well, Jimmy, you better stay safe out there. Watch out for them Bigfoots and them werewolves out there. Okay.
Well, I got the folk Arkansas. There's one down there running around, you know. So
there he is.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of them. You got a bunch of dog men around where you live too. So
I used to have one.
For you.
I used to have one up Taylorville, but I don't know where he's at now.
Oh,
he might have moved on.
There's a bunch of them out in Taylorville in Mississippi. That's right. So
yeah, we had one in Washington County a while back, but it moved on. I guess they, come and go as they please. But I get along with Bigfoots. I get along with werewolves. Werewolves, at least my problems, Vampires are a problem. So,
well, we're going to talk about that on another show because I think we've talked about vampires before, but we're going to have to. I'm bringing you back, Jimmy. You got so much knowledge; it's out of this world.
Thank you. You bring us some very interesting questions, and you're right on top of what's going on in your field. And I have no doubt if there's ever was a Bigfoot hauled up in front of Congress, you'd be the one leading on up in there.
I'll be right there. Yes,
I've
walked the halls of Congress before, and I will be there with the Bigfoot one day, maybe.
I think you would be.
And my werewolf security team.
I wouldn't be surprised if you paint the toenails on that werewolf your favorite toenail color.
Oh my gosh, I will do it. Just wait, y'all. Just wait. Big things are coming.
Don't put no rollers in that Bigfoot's hair now. You going too far now.
Okay, I won't. We'll do a perm before we go. Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right. Oh my gosh. Well, Jimmy, thank you so much again for being here. And I want to thank the whole audience for being here tonight and for sticking with us for 3.5 hours. This might be one of the longest shows that we've ever done on the channel, and it is fantastic. I want to thank Bobby Singleton for gifting those Cryptid Huntress Hunt Club memberships tonight. Yvonne, thank you so much. Kent, thank you for the super stickers as well. Skip, Dusty Vinyl Band, thank you, Skip, so much for that super sticker. And let's see, Colleen, thank you for the super stickers tonight. That's so sweet. I really do appreciate it. I want to thank all of my moderators for being here tonight and everybody that was in the chat. I'm sending all my love out to all of y'all. Please be safe out there and come back and see me on Saturday night. I don't even know what day it is, y'all. Saturday night on The Hunt, 10 p.m. I'll have a fantastic show with another fantastic guest. And Jimmy, final thoughts before we say goodbye.
If anybody needs to get a hold of me, I'm looking for a corporate sponsor. Get a hold of Jessica, and Jessica get a hold of me. Now I don't do one-on-one interviews. I don't do any personal problems. So if you're having a personal problem, I just cannot help you. If you want to watch my interviews, and if that helps, fine. But I don't do one-on-one counseling, And as far as I know, Jessica doesn't do it. But like I said, I'm looking for a corporate sponsor, and just get a hold of Jessica, and Jessica get a hold of me, and we'll talk.
We'll do that, y'all. Hit us up. Hit us up, y'all. All right, y'all. Jimmy, thanks again for being here. Y'all have a great night, and I will see you guys back here on Saturday, y'all. Okay. Man, this has been a long show. It's amazing. All right, everybody. Have a great night. Bye, y'all.